Hello, welcome. Okay, that's all set up. Now I just need to post the links. What? What the fuck? Why is this copied? Of all things. What the actual fuck? What? I'm so confused. What the hell? Why was that the last thing that was copied? I guess nothing got copied in the time since... Whatever. Oh, this is a good URL. It's got a bunch of N's and M's in it. All capital. Okay. We good? Is anyone here? Hey, Serena. Jibuno to you too. So yeah, last time we were introduced to Mamoru Akasaka, an investigator from Tokyo who's been sent here to Hinamizawa to investigate a possible connection between the anti-dam protest movement and the disappearance, or rather I should say kidnapping, of the grandson of the Minister of Construction. While here, he has learned to love the natural beauty of the village, but is also growing a little bit afraid of what conspiracies may be lying in store here, and at the same time, he has met a girl with a similar dual nature, the sweet Rika Furude, who has nonetheless shown a strange, dark, and mature side to him when she warned him to go back to Tokyo lest he regret it. We'll have to see how things pan out from here. So yeah, let's go. Pardon me? The phone suddenly rang. I woke up in a hurry. The clock read 9 p.m. Damn it. I see, Serena. Anyway. I slept past the time I was supposed to report in. I picked up the receiver. Akasaka-sama, you have a call from an outside line. Shall I connect you? It's from a coworker named Kano-sama. I knew it. I didn't call in, so they'd phone me. Sorry, please put them through. Understood. I'll connect you, so please hang up the receiver for the time being. After I put down the receiver for a few seconds, the phone began to ring again. Hi, yes, hello. This is Akasaka. Akasaka-kun, this is Kano. Good work out there. You didn't call in for your regular report, so we called instead. What's your situation? Leaving the lecture for later, my senior coworker got straight to the point. Today I went to the village proper. Under the guise of a tourist, I managed to establish contact with the mayor and several other core members of the Guardians. I wasn't able to ask them anything, but I left a good impression and was able to make a bridge for my investigation from tomorrow onwards. I see. It looks like things are going smoothly. Akasaka-kun, you seem rather naive sometimes, but that might have worked in your favor. I guess you made some good progress for now? I don't have the experience to make a comparison, so I don't know if it's that good or not. I think things went well for today, though. Did you find out anything from the prefectural or local offices? And does it look as though the Onigafuchi Guardians is unrelated to this incident? I still didn't know. I should have been able to say that immediately. I only had to say that, but for some reason, I hesitated. I'm still investigating, so I don't know what to say yet. I see. Could you let us know as soon as possible? I think you understand, but after tonight, it'll have been a full 4 days since the kidnapping happened. They didn't set a time limit, but it's obvious that time is not on our side. I think you know that. Yeah, I know. I'll investigate a little quicker while still being careful about it. Okay. Be sure to look after yourself. You're dealing with a violent organization here. It might be dangerous to let your guard down. If you feel that you're in any danger, contact me immediately. In that case, I can get the local public safety office prepared to help you. I thank you. I'll do my best. Anything else to report? I reported several bits of supplementary information, and at the very end I decided to ask. How's the investigation going on your end? Everybody's doing their best here, but we're not making much progress. After all, the number of organizations we're investigating is vast. So if you find out the one you're investigating is in the clear, we'll have you return to Tokyo to assist some of the other officers. The chief is saying to dig up what you can on Onigafuchi, but I don't think a residential anti-dam protest has any relation to the incident at hand. Sending somebody out just to investigate a single group makes me cringe, really. At this point, he was just complaining. He was telling me to stop taking time enjoying my trip, to finish up and get back quick. I'll try and resolve this as soon as I can. Thanks. I'm counting on you. Well then, if there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Okay, that's all I have. As we were ending our call, he scolded me thoroughly for being late with my regular report. After that, I hung up the phone and sprawled out on the bed. Come to think of it, I hadn't heard anything from Oishi. He was supposed to contact me about a time and place to meet with the informant tonight. I thought about getting angry with Oishi in retaliation for being scolded for forgetting my daily report. Come to think of it, though, Oishi didn't really say anything other than that he was going to call tonight. Waiting for a phone call when you didn't know what time it was going to come was in itself rather difficult. Just when I thought that, the phone rang. I picked up the receiver in a hurry. Hello? Well, this is a surprise. Akasaka-san, you're pretty quick to answer the phone. Are you a regular user of dating chat lines or something? I would never even try something seedy like that. The way you overreact is rather interesting. Want to go to a place where you can have a little bit of lewd fun? I'll pass. So could you please get to the point, Oishi-san? Really? Too bad. We'll leave that for next time then. Well, I'll get to the point. Many of the executives in the Onigafuchi Guardians had a lot of sway in the neighboring regions. Even in Okinomiya, there were a lot of people with relations in the village. That's why meeting in the Shishibone Market District, far from Okinomiya, was a matter of course. Akasaka-san! Over here! Did you get a little lost? Coming from the north entrance might have been a bit of a detour, but it was easier to give directions from there. No, I'm sorry for being late. Did you eat dinner already? Yeah, I already did. Well then, shall we go to a place where we can get a drink? Do you prefer Western alcohol? Or maybe sake? Would you prefer a place with or without women? Don't worry about it. I don't drink while I'm on the job. Hearing that, the man that Oishi had brought along bent backwards as he guffawed, clasping Oishi on the shoulder. See? Isn't he just adorable? In exchange, can you give him a bit extra? That money all came from this guy's wallet, you know. The man that Oishi had brought seemed almost like a ticket scalper or a bookie. Even his appearance was dubious. The informant grinned deviously. Hey boy, how much did you give this guy? Looks like there was quite a bit skimmed off the top, you know. Oishi's handling fee was included, so I took that into account. It seemed that the informant had expected a more extravagant reaction on my part. When I responded matter-of-factly, he realized that I was an entirely different type of person than he was. You prefer whiskey with an E or without? But rather than putting a distance between us, it seemed that I had piqued his interest. I said it, didn't I? He's the serious type. But do you see, Akasaka-san? People in a line of work like ours can really use their wealth of experience to their advantage. I'm wondering exactly how the experience of drinking in a bar with women would work to my advantage. The informant, unable to contain himself, clutched at his stomach as he guffawed, heedless of the people watching. Oh, lordy! Akasaka-san, you really can judge people. That's what an education does for you. Oishi-san, you've been drinking somewhere, haven't you? Are you drunk? What's wrong with drinking when I'm off duty? Even if you're working, I'm not. Oishi, who was the sort that'd fool around to begin with, was in such a good mood I couldn't figure out a way to deal with him. Completely different than me, who had come worried about getting every bit of information I could. Oishi-san, after taking so much money, you were supposed to get me information worth at least as much. I thought this, but then realized I was getting my information from the informant, so it didn't matter how drunk Oishi was. There was nothing I could complain about, but I still felt slightly riled up. Oishi and the informant, it was no doubt a fake name, but he introduced himself as Sato, led the way deeper and deeper into the back streets of the market district. Even though the market was bustling, a couple of turns off the main street and you were in a desolate alleyway. Oishi started climbing a set of stairs on the side of a seedy building. There wasn't any sort of signage, so I couldn't tell if the place was open or if it was even a store at all. Don't worry, this isn't a dubious place. Those words coming from Oishi's mouth had absolutely no credibility. Beyond the door was, thankfully, a typical mahjong parlor. I was relieved that it wasn't the sort of suspicious place I had to be on my guard about. Welcome, welcome. Oh, Oishi-san, it's been a while. Want to join in? There'll be a free spot soon. No, I'm here with a group today, so it's fine. Oh, sorry to keep you waiting. Mahjong is a game played with 4 people. It seems that a middle-aged man who was going to be our 4th had already arrived and was waiting for us. You're late, Crowder! I was just thinking of going home! Oishi made an excuse for why we had taken so long. Eventually, realizing that I was a new face, the other man grew interested. That's Akasaka-san! He's a rookie who came all the way from Tokyo on assignment. They have high hopes for him. Boy, can you play Mahjong? Well, I played a bit when I was still a student. Sato and the old man cackled in unison. Their plot to sucker me out of my money was painfully obvious. I thought you'd be a bit tired from your assignment, leaving you on edge all the time. So I thought I'd give you a night to cleanse your spirit. I know asking this now might be stupid, but we're all police, aren't we? You've probably made this joke already, but all my Yakuza homies don't know how to play Mahjong, I see. Well, let's not talk about that. Loosen up a bit, we won't actually gamble anything. We're just deciding who's going to pay for everyone to go play at a very nice place afterward. Go play. And what kind of place would you be doing that? Without reservation, the 3 of them started suggesting places like cabarets, high-class clubs, and even brothels. At the very least, they were the type of places you couldn't go to with money that was just for funsies. Oishi-san took all my money the other day, and I also have work to do, so I can't stay for long. Then all you have to do is win! If you win, then you won't have to pay for this table. You can talk to Crowdo about work or whatever. No matter what happened, it seemed like they were intent on playing Mahjong for free. I would have to fasten my resolve a bit. If I was going to be underestimated like this forever, it was going to get in the way of my work. I understand. Then I'll play with you guys for just a bit. If I win, you guys don't get any of the money or get to go to any of those dirty places, and we talk about work right away. Yeah. Bring it on. If I win, we're headed straight to the Blue Mermaid on Flower Road. This old Lechier likes that place too. Of course, we're going to hop between all the places where they keep the girls coming. Akemi-chan! What about you, Sato-san? I prefer a place where we can drink quietly. Like a nice quiet place with a bunny girl? The last time we went drinking, you pulled the tail right off that bunny girl, didn't you? Didn't you end up having to pay for that? The owner started a bottle of Dom Perignon on my tab and called it a tailoring fee. What a lively table this was. I could tell the other customers were glaring at us while we loudly continued our crude conversation. Speaking of which, the fact that they assumed I was the same was a bit disheartening. Oichi had taken all the money I'd brought, so everything I had left was out of my own pocket. In addition, there wasn't that much left of that either. If I kept on hanging around him like this, through his goading, my wallet would disappear into the night. I had to somehow win and return the conversation to my job. But these people, no matter how you looked at it, were pretty good. Sorry, Yukie. Well then, I'll just call Richi here. Well, the old man and Sato-san probably won't fall for this silly Richi. I wonder if Akasaka-kun will spit out what I need. At any rate, Kuraudo's hand is probably holding something like that, huh? In that case, this one ought to go through. There! Oh-ho! The old man's pretty good. He's quietly trying to use one of my safe tiles to complete his hand, isn't he? It seems that Akasaka-kun has at least learned the ropes when it comes to guarding against someone's Richi. But that will be his downfall. What's wrong, boy? Would you hurry up and discard? If you're not sure, anything that Kuraudo's already thrown away should be safe, no? Ooh, Akasaka-kun's really fretting over this one. It was glaringly obvious that he had a safe tile to discard, but he didn't want to throw it away because it would move him farther from completing his hand. They're so nice when they're young and innocent. Come on, hurry up and throw out the kicker. If he gave me the winning tile, we'd be headed to an establishment where we could do with all sorts of licking and sucking. If he gives the old man his winning tile, we'll be headed straight to the place with maids and bloomers. This will go through, right? He looked up as he hesitantly threw out a tile that was... Oh, too bad. Hey now, that's a dangerous tile, you know. Kuraudo, does that go through? Yeah, it will. It seems this time you were lucky. But as long as the round kept going, I could still win off the draw. But after that, Akasaka-kun managed to luckily avoid throwing any bad tiles, and somehow the round managed to end without anybody completing a hand. Denpai! Denpai! Not done. Sato-san had keenly anticipated that two players were in Richi and had decided to play it safe. What a cool-headed way of playing. Now let's see, what kind of hand did Akasaka-kun have? When the round ends with nobody winning at Mahjong, anybody in Tenpai has to show their hand. But if you're not in Tenpai, you have no obligation to reveal it. Your average beginner would normally show their hand even if they weren't in Tenpai, and start a commotion about how if this tile or if that tile came, they would be in Tenpai. But he didn't. Being stingy? How do you do, boy? Come on and show me! Sato-san reached over to flip the hand that Akasaka-kun had casually placed face down. What the hell is this? He was nowhere near Tenpai. Was Akasaka-kun totally bad at this after all? Right then, as the old man compared the tiles from Akasaka-kun's hand to the discard pool, a puzzled expression crossed his face. Boy, you were in Tenpai right around here, weren't you? Why'd you break your hand? The higher Manzu tiles suddenly got more valuable, so I held them back. Even though the chance they were safe tiles had increased with respect to Oishi-san's Richi. It would have been safer to read the discards, but there was a player who went out of their way to keep the tiles out of play. Oh. So Kuraudo's Tenpai was no good from the start, in other words. If it wasn't such a high-level trap, I would have thought that you were waiting for me to throw out the winning tile. But the more concerning thing is that you were in Tenpai and didn't say anything. When did you realize I was in Tenpai? Around here? You threw out 4 tiles in a row immediately. At first I thought you were just discarding redundant tiles, but I noticed you glancing over at me, and I realized you were waiting for something. Akasaka-kun, you... Akasaka-san, when did you first start playing Mahjong? I never did, except in high school and university. Now, let's continue. Since Sato-san wasn't in Tenpai and the round ended without a winner, then I'm next, right? The next dealer? It seems like Akasaka-kun is really aware of how the game flows. We thought we were just going to eat him alive, but it looks like that isn't going to be so easy. Oi-san, looks like you're going for the bamboo tiles. Should I put some in play? This boy. Kuroda, don't back down! As long as I get 3 more good tiles. Sato-san, think you can do it? Damn it. Oops. I'll just force you to go for a cheap tanyao. Cheap! A straight? Well, sorry, I'm going to pawn that tile. Well now, going to call 3 of a kind after he declared a straight? Trying to override and interfere? Boy, you're getting pretty used to this. Oh no, I couldn't even compare to you guys who have been playing since before I was even born. That's game. Ron. Triplets, 2 red Dora and 3 more Dora. And the dealer, so this will cost you quite a bit. Akasaka-san, nice job! Now we'll have to get serious. Won't we? Well, can you get serious about handing over your points? I'm tired, so let's end this quickly. Akasaka-kun, this is somehow unreal. Before I could realize it, there was an ominous cold air emitting from beneath Akasaka-kun's feet. Hell blase. The 2, 5, and 8 Manzus are laughing at you. Damn it! Boy, you... Kuroda, finish it! You have to end the boy's turn as dealer! I hate to admit it, but that seems like the best option. There it is! Ron! Simple straights, 1 Dora! Sorry, head bump. Ron. Straight. Head bump? You damn brat! Brat? So you played that sloppily against a brat? I guess that means you're worse than a brat yourself. It's so interesting. The way you guys call people things like brat and boy. Akasaka-kun? That is you, isn't it? It feels like you're a totally different person. You thought that I, being a sucker, would let you drink some good booze tonight. Seems that you were a little off the mark. Ron. Triple straight to hit a Dora and another Dora. Oh! He actually did it! That's why I'm saying you guys are slacking. No matter how you look at it, you have to be able to read such an obvious 3-way weight. Akasaka-kun chuckled as he rested his chin in his hands. That pose was so fitting it was almost scary. Hey, Kuroda! This isn't what we discussed! Who the hell said he was a naive sucker right for the picking? Who could it be? Oi-san, this is bad! If he keeps going like this, we're seriously going to lose! Akasaka-kun, for you to make me get serious. Looks like you really want to be milked dry. Pon. Pon. That sounds nice. One more time. Pon. Akasaka-kun was almost singing at this point. The tiles he had open were all pin tiles. You can't be serious. Are you really going for the flush? Pon. Boy, are you right in the head? You've opened 4 sets. You only have 1 tile left, you know. That's right. Did you know? Waiting on a single tile is the hardest thing to read. Are you an idiot? With that much of your head revealed, you don't think we'd give you a tile you need, do you? I know what you're doing, Akasaka-san. That's not a flush or a half flush, is it? The fact that you called Pon 4 times means you're already in a position for an all-triplet hand. Right now, you're far and away in the lead. You're trying to show a flush and goad us into giving you triplets, aren't you? If that's what you think, want to try throwing out some pins? The left 5 tiles in your hand, Oishi-san. They're pin tiles you're reluctant to throw away, aren't they? Why don't you try discarding them in order from the left? You must be joking. Is he a mahjong god? If not, he had to be the main character of a manga or something. Hey, Play. You feel like you had something important to tell me, but you can't remember. Well, if it comes to you, feel free to message me on Discord. And I'll have a look at it when I get a chance. Did you perhaps have some sort of dream that involved something very important coming up? Perhaps retrace your steps throughout the day to determine if there was something that comes to mind. At that moment, the old man sent me a sign under the table. The message was simple and clear. Kuroda, do it. Crush him. I don't like to cheat against kids like this. Idiot! After being disrespected like this, we can't pull back now. Well, I'm not responsible for what happens, you know? Go ahead. Here we go, boy. Richi! We'll go open. I'm waiting for a 1, 4, or 7 of pins. Most likely, the tile that Akasaka-kun was waiting for was one of those tiles. With this, Akasaka-kun was no longer capable of winning the hand. When I drew from the wall, I switched out the tile that Akasaka-kun would draw. The tile that I put in was the 1 pin, of one of the tiles that the old man was waiting on. Akasaka-kun discarded it a little while ago, so there was no threat of it being the one he needed. Come on, it's your turn, boy! I knew he was troubled that the tile he drew was the 1 pin. Of course, he couldn't discard it. Boy, you must be aware, but if you discard into an open Richi, it's worth the limit, you know? You don't have to tell me that. The tile that came from Akasaka-kun's hand was an honor tile. Whew, ain't that something? You did have a dream? There's only 1 north wind tile left, isn't there? You were counting on a really rough wait, weren't you? But with this, Akasaka-kun's fate was decided. Brat. You're lucky you're safe. But your hand only has a single tile. You think you'll be able to run away the rest of this round? So, it's going to be like that. Akasaka-kun glared at the old man with a discerning eye. This guy had pretty good instincts. Did he figure out we were cheating? Let's stop this. Akasaka-kun is a step or 2 ahead of us. Fool! You think we can stop after we've come this far? Next, make him draw it! The next tile Akasaka-kun would draw was the 7 pin. With that, it would be settled. No matter which one he discarded, he'd play right into the old man's hand. An unavoidable full payout! When I drew my tile, I sneakily swapped Akasaka-san's... Achoo! Crash. What? Akasaka-kun suddenly sneezed, collapsing the wall of tiles in front of him. Hey, what are you doing? Sorry, I accidentally knocked over the wall when I sneezed. There's a penalty for that, right? I'm the dealer, so 4,000 to everybody? Or should I pay a deposit? Unable to hold back, I guffawed. Akasaka-kun, knowing he was going to be cornered a second time and unable to escape, he took the drastic measure of knocking over his own wall. You're a good boy to get away from a full payout like that. Or son, could you not bother putting me in such an obvious trap? If we were a baba, this would have been the point where I flipped the table. Oh, no. Sorry. I underestimated you. For some reason, you're really good, aren't you? Answer me honestly. You got a lot of experience when you were younger, didn't you? I played quite a bit around Waseda and Takadanobaba. The place I frequented banned me for winning too much. I made the woman who had become my wife pretty angry, so I washed my hands of it all. Raised the stakes too high? How much were you playing for at the time? It depends on who I was playing with, but I had an almost perfect record playing in Kabukicho. Especially since when I played against a certain crowd, my life was on the line. 20 times?! What kind of stakes were those? Did you have Yakuza at your table? Or pro baseball players? What's this? Kurodo! You buffoon! Where did you pull this guy from? He's practically a professional! I give up! Jeez! Boy, it's your win. I surrender. Thank you very much. It was an honor. Oh my. Akasaka-san, your personality really changes when you play. Hello, is somebody else there? I noticed that I now have 3 viewers. Why do you even have a day job? You'd have no problem living as a freelancer. To be a pro mahjong player, you need both talent and luck. I didn't have anything like that supporting me. Luck is luck. With somebody of your skill, I think you'd be able to make it pretty far. Normal luck doesn't cut it. Calling a con, and 1 time out of 3, you can aim to win on the extra draw with 4 Dora. That kind of luck. Akasaka-kun, if you could judge something like that, you're already bordering on the supernatural. No, there's plenty of people who could do that without cheating or superpowers. There was a person I met in Shinjuku who would get Doras every time he blinked. He was as strong as a demon. There was a pro I played with in Yokohama who would draw the tile he needed immediately after calling Richi, like it was an everyday thing. I don't have that kind of luck. What types of folks were those? They weren't named Ryu or Satoshi by any chance. Well then, is it alright if I'm declared the overall winner then? Yeah, we totally lost. I lost. It's been a while since I lost this big. Still, when you were playing, boy, you were pretty into it. It was kind of scary. I hear that a lot. I don't mean to change gears like that, though. Did I really look that scary? Yup. The three of us nodded emphatically in agreement. So that was Akasaka-kun, the Mahjong prodigy. Before he goes home from his assignment, maybe I could have him go play at a high-stakes table at my place. But it's not good to get greedy. Well then, nothing for it. It was a promise. We'll break up our little late-night study group right now. Sorry about this, old man. That's it for tonight. Nothing you can do. I'm going home to sleep. My body won't last like this. Problems at work? Sending me to Google Translate. Okay. The message retracted. Let's see. Oh, he's the foreman of the primary construction site at the Hinamizawa Dam. He's butting heads with the residents every day. It's a rough business. Around next year, I might be in charge of the second site as well. I heard that Kuroda-san was pissing blood. He won't hold out much longer. You'll be alright, old man. Your skull's thicker than it looks. I'm not exactly a saint, you know. There's times that just make my blood boil. I especially can't stand dealing with that bratty daughter of Sonozaki's. I think one of these days I'm gonna rearrange her face. Now. At least the pay is good, right? I heard the wages are pretty exorbitant. Of course they are! If the pay was cheap, nobody would hang around that god-awful job. Hey, Kurado, exactly when are the police going to tell all the villagers to shove off? There'll be a notice of eviction from the government, right? Maybe. I wonder what'll happen. The old man, who identified himself as the foreman of the Hinamizawa Dam, spewed a few complaints until he felt better about it, then left quietly. Well then, let's go. I'll leave the rest to Sato-san. Oishi-san, are you going home? If I'm here, I'll just be in the way, won't I? Besides, the one who bought Sato-san's services was you. I didn't pay for my share. Oishi-san was kind of sketchy, but he was strangely conscientious about some things. I felt quite a bit of a gap between myself and Oishi's generation from that part of him I didn't comprehend. Then, boy... No, I can't call Mr. Mahjong here a boy no more. Is Akasaka-kun alright with you? Yes. Then, Akasaka-kun. Shall we go? Well then, Akasaka-san. Later. If you're having any trouble, you can count on me anytime. I don't have any more money to pay you, you know that? Okay. If you go easy on me the next time, we'll be even. Uishi, seemingly still not having had his fill of playing around, but without overstaying his welcome, disappeared into the night. The informant, named Sato-san, had me get into his car before he set off. He favored narrow roads and made numerous short left turns. Checking if we're being followed? Yeah, you know a lot about this. Checking to see if you were being tailed by making left turns was a rather classic technique. If it was just a single pursuer, you could confirm it that way. But if you're being tailed as a team, this archaic method wouldn't let you shake them. Of course, doing it anyway was better than not. I didn't hear anything from the boss as to who you are, Akasaka-kun. Related to the police? If you're familiar with checking for being tailed, the only other possibility I can think of is something like a private detective. If it's not something I have to say, I'd like to refuse to answer that question. My! Ever since we played Mahjong, you seem a lot more mature. I wonder where that hesitant person went from when we first met. I smiled wryly. Looking back now, I had to be a little grateful for being made to play Mahjong. Thanks to that, I was able to relieve some tension. Eventually, Sato-san, confirming that there were no cars following us, slipped outside the city. We were on a pitch-black country road, unable to see anything besides the lights outside. The only things I was able to hear were the hum of the car's air conditioning and the chirping of insects and frogs. I heard from the boss that you want to hear a bit about Hinamizawa village, yeah? Like about the old houses known as the three families who control the place, or that right now it's pretty much the Sonozaki family running things? If you know that much already, I'll cut out the introductions. Then, if you would, can you confirm or deny if the Onigafuchi Guardians is involved with the kidnapping of Minister Inukai's grandson? Sato-san checked the rearview mirror one more time to confirm there wasn't anybody behind us before speaking. Last night, the Sonozaki main house held a family council. Did you hear about it from the boss? No. If it was a normal meeting, then it would just be all the relatives coming together over a nice cup of tea or something. But a family council held by the main house isn't quite so relaxed. A family council held by the Sonozaki main house. That would be a meeting between those who truly controlled Hinamizawa village. They wouldn't be talking about private family matters. It would be about the village as a whole. About organizing activities against the dam project. Among other things, everything would be decided there. In reality, they were deciding the fate of the village. At the head of the meeting was Oryo Sonozaki, more or less called Empress Sonozaki. As the ultimate decision-maker of the clan, she was to be feared and respected. Infirm with old age, she was often unable to stand on her own, but her words carried enough weight to sway the fate of the village. It seemed that lately she had grown weak, and on days where she wasn't feeling well, remained bedridden. Family councils that occurred while she wasn't feeling well took place with her on the floor. In the middle of a dignified Japanese-style room, still in a futon, only the upper half of her body sitting upright, a stern look on her face. That was Oryo Sonozaki. Sitting next to her was her heir, Mion Sonozaki. She was still young. No, young wasn't quite the right word. She was a girl who remained childish. Her role was to merely sit beside Oryo Sonozaki, sometimes responding to her requests. However, she was the only one deemed worthy to succeed Oryo. She had the same hawkish eyes, enough to give pause to anybody who so much as looked at them. Much was expected of her in the future, this granddaughter of the Sonozaki's leader. And also on either side of her sat several other important members of the remaining three families, the Kimiyoshi family and the Furude family. First on the list for the Kimiyoshi family was of course the mayor of Hinamizawa village, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi, and lined up beside him were several more of his direct relatives. Opposite to them sat the other of the three families, the Furude family. The Furude family was only comprised of the family of a Shinto priest, so the only ones sitting there were said priest, his wife, and their daughter Rika. Rika was doted on by many of the older folks in the village, and it seemed that Oryo was no exception. While the stress from just attending a family council was said to be enough to shorten your lifespan by 3 days, it seemed like Rika was the only one exempt from that. No matter how charged the atmosphere was around her, she paid it no mind, instead humming along as she doodled in a sketchbook. In fact, the night before, lying on her stomach while humming and doodling, she nonchalantly tucked her legs into Orio's futon like it was a kotatsu. All this was the three families. And all around the room, lined row upon row, were relatives of the Sonozaki family. The only ones who were afforded cushions to sit on were direct relatives. The others were left to sit in the seiza position, directly on the tatami mats. With Empress Sonozaki enshrined at their center, they were almost like a giant snake coiled around the room. It was decided that everybody would sit in order of their rank. The number of people from the Sonozaki family was overwhelming. The fact that the Sonozaki family held so many seats at a meeting where everything pertaining to the village was decided made determining where the balance of power was held in the three families as clear as day. The number of members in attendance from each of the families directly reflected on how much influence they had in ruling Hinamizawa. What was talked about at that meeting? Sato-san, after remaining silent for a while, quietly began to speak. Wasn't our monetary gift of appreciation to the media a little large? Breaking the long moment of silence was the head of the Himiyoshi family, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi. The Onigafuchi Guardians wasn't a business. They were nothing more than a private organization pushing for the cancellation of the Hinamizawa Dam project, with no reliable source of income. Fundraising had always been a problem. When they first started operating, they managed to collect a sizable amount of funds through donations, but as the conflict dragged on, that amount was steadily declining. This isn't an era where you can get what you want just by throwing rocks. It's very important you don't underestimate the power of the media, and we want to borrow some of that down the road. The expressions of the people related to the Sonozaki family were sullen, as the one who suggested that they should borrow that power was the family head, Orio Sonozaki. I don't know what seiza is. Is that just sitting on your knees? The battle wasn't just about force of arms. In this civilized age, there were civilized methods of fighting. Orio suggested that, creating a strategy incorporating the mass media. Orio's foresight was spot on, and the effects of that plan, while at first unclear, slowly began to manifest. If the physical confrontation at the construction site was meant to delay progress on the dam by even one day, then the propaganda war using the media was aimed at attacking the dam project itself. At first there were those who had doubts about that strategy, but there was nobody now who called for those results into question. But in order to maintain those media ties, a colossal amount of money was required. As long as the amount of funds they had was abundant, things would turn out fine. It couldn't be argued that it was a massive expense, but the results spoke for themselves. But with the conflict continuing to drag on, the circumstances had changed. The head of the Sonozaki family, no, the one who sat at the pinnacle of the Hinamizawa's three families, Orio, had suggested the idea herself, so it was already untouchable and continued to be allowed to drain from the budget. Nobody acknowledged that it should be so allowed, but nobody could say anything. That was the price of dealing with the mass media. Okay, yeah. What do you think, Orio-san? The only person who could object to a plan proposed by the head of the Sonozaki household herself was probably Mayor Kimiyoshi. Orio, with a hard-to-define expression on her face, as if she had severed herself from the fetters of mortal emotion, simply listened quietly to Kimiyoshi's words. But really, it was hard to tell if she was quietly listening or didn't even have the intention of listening at all. Last year, we went through a lot of trouble getting people to wrap their heads around the price hike on the bulletins we were putting out. We convinced them it was just the one time. It just wouldn't do if we had another one this year. Right, Furude-san? The mayor looked to the priest and his wife from the Furude family for affirmation. The priest gave a vague expression, avoiding a prompt response, but his wife gave her answer without a second thought. That's right. The cost of the bulletins are a particularly harsh burden for the poorer families. Everybody is dealing with it for the sake of the village, but it's best we don't increase the prices anymore. The bulletin was, as its name implied, a bulletin published by the Onigafuchi Guardians. It outlined the Alliance's activities, ideals, and resolve, but you couldn't deny the contents were rather piecemeal. That bulletin's main goal wasn't to inform people, but rather was something to sell to businesses and people living in the village or connected to it, and using those sales to collect funds. In other words, it had become something of a tax. Of course, it didn't have to be said that this was one of the main sources of income for the Onigafuchi Guardians. Originally, purchase was supposed to be voluntary, but in Hinamizawa it had silently become the opposite. In the neighboring towns as well, it seemed that many businesses were buying copies just to avoid butting heads with the Alliance. The priest whispered to his wife to not say anything unnecessary, but was struck down decidedly with a cold glare. Cowering from that glare, the priest shut his mouth. The priest's wife always held the power in their relationship. That was because she was the one who carried the Furude bloodline. The priest merely married into the family. He was nothing more than somebody who adopted the name just to join the three families. He should have been able to find a spot fairly high up in the hierarchy of things, but the lack of authority in his voice meant that he had still not gained any favor. Casting a backwards glance at her rather disparate parents, Rika continued to doodle whimsically without paying them any mind. Signaled by a look from Oryo, Mion brought her ear closer to her grandmother. There, something was said to her in a quiet voice. After responding with a couple of questions, with a nod from Oryo, Mion looked around the room and conveyed her grandmother's words. There will be no freeze on the price increase for the bulletin. Kimiyoshi made a face like he had just bitten into something unpleasant, but that expression quickly disappeared like it had never happened at all. But, Mion-chan, I think you already know this, but the cost of the bulletin is by no means easily affordable. It's a burden carried by everybody in Hinamizawa. If we make people carry too much of that burden, it's possible we'll collapse from the inside. And who on the inside would start that collapse? Who? I didn't mean it like that. I'm asking who would be the first to buckle. Being cross-examined by a girl who still had fragments of childishness remaining within her, the words stuck in Kimiyoshi's throat as he sunk into silence. Mion repeated her question once more, looking around the crowded room. Everybody refrained making eye contact to avoid being pierced by her gaze. The words she had spoken were unarguably said in proxy for Oryo. That's why when Mion spoke them, they carried the same weight. But the look in her eyes was different. Like Oryo's, they had a hawkish gaze, strong enough that anybody looking upon them would freeze in their tracks and yield. But that gaze was without question one that belonged to Mion herself. As Mion would eventually inherit everything from Oryo, the day when she would stand up as a young and capable leader in her own right would come. I don't get that joke. Nobody wanted to believe otherwise for even a minute. That's why nobody even thought of Mion as just some sort of little kid. Kimiyoshi-san, nobody will lose their resolve over something like a price hike on the bulletin. Kimiyoshi, while grumbling a little bit, made a gesture as if to say he had no objection. The expenses related to the mass media will continue. If those expenses become too much, we'll have no choice but to continue the price hikes. Mion had rendered her judgment. Everybody bowed their heads, silently listening to her words. In the name of Mion Sonozaki, as acting head of the Sonozaki family, I hereby declare that all this shall be effective immediately. Oh, I see. There shall be no objections, and any opposition shall be removed by force. The formal decree was read aloud, indicating her judgment. There would be no retrial, but there was a certain authority behind those words that even a courthouse couldn't compare to. If she was a judge, she would have banged her gavel, signaling that the matter was settled. Mion pulled out a large bell from inside her clothes and rang it. Everybody present could only prostrate themselves before the harsh sound of the bell. Well, that's a rather old-fashioned family council, isn't it? A young guy like you would probably find it hard to believe. In an antiquated place like this, these types of things have firm roots. It was exactly as Oishi had said. The old system of the three families had vanished, and now the Sonozaki family is running things by themselves. On top of that, their rule was borderline despotic. Was that the end of the meeting? No, there's more. I'll continue. Eventually, after the ringing of the bell ceased, there was a deafening silence. Within all of that, a lone man shuffled closer to Mion and whispered something in her ear. Mion asked several questions quietly in response. When she was satisfied, she motioned for the man to leave. The man who talked to Mion was a member of a gang that her father was the leader of. That organization had the entire area of Shishibone City under its control, so it was quite well known even here. Of course, this was talking about the criminal underworld, so it's not like just anybody would know. But just showing a patch with the gang symbol on it was enough to resolve any disputes in the neighborhood. Mion's biological father, to Oryo, was her daughter's husband. The power of that man's gang was the driving force that controlled the dark underbelly of the Onigafuchi Guardians. And so that man, from his position as the next in line to control the three families, continued to coerce everybody around him with his unconventional presence. Mion exchanged a look with her father. Was it okay for her to tell what she just heard directly to Oryo? It looked like she was asking him that question. Her father gently but firmly nodded his response. Mion also nodded, then sidled up to Oryo and informed her of something. Eventually, Mion finished conveying her message, separated herself from Oryo, and fixed her posture, waiting for Oryo to signal her response. You cringe slightly when you hear prostrate because it sounds like a combination of prostate and castrate, even though it means neither of those things. Yeah, I get that. It wasn't often that Oryo showed any emotion. That's why when she started to laugh quietly, a vague sense of uneasiness crept over everybody in the room. That's quite the conundrum, isn't it? Oryo was laughing so happily that Kimiyoshi had to hesitantly ask. What is it, Oryo-san? If this land is like a mother to us, then this business with the dam is like somebody threatening our mother's life, isn't it? Kimiyoshi, unable to comprehend the meaning of her words, looked confused. Oryo, with a wide grin on her face, turned towards everybody and addressed them in a clarion voice. The minister behind the dam project is apparently rattled over the kidnapping of his grandson. That makes us even. That's absurd! Information on the kidnapping of Minister Inukai's grandson shouldn't have leaked from anywhere. How did they know? Even we didn't know much about the kidnapping incident. Exactly how did an antiquated household so far away from Tokyo come to know of it? It was a tranquil place, but I couldn't help but have an uneasy feeling about Hinamizawa village. At some point, I had mentally filed this place away as unrelated to the incident at hand. That mental paperwork had just blown away in the wind. How did the Onigafuchi Guardians know about that? Sato-san, unable to come up with an answer, fell into silence. I'm sorry. Please continue. Sure. The Minister of Construction's grandson was kidnapped? Oryo-san, is that true? That major of an incident was nowhere to be seen in the newspapers or on TV. But in Hinamizawa, there was nothing strange about Oryo knowing something that the rest of the world didn't. Our pain is the pain of losing a mother. I don't think it completely makes up for it, but the pain of losing a grandchild... He'll have to bear with that for a bit. Don't you think? The last question wasn't addressed to anybody in particular. It was as if she was looking for consensus. Still... land and a human child are different things. I don't mind hiding him here, but I want no harm to befall him. The child isn't to blame. Make sure to keep that in mind. That means that the Onigafuchi Guardians were involved in the kidnapping? I can't say for certain. Why? Even though their leader, Oryo, was clearly giving orders on the treatment of the kidnapped child. Lad, you see, this is what the Sonozaki family always does. Always does? What do you mean by that? Let's say there was a particular problem. One that wasn't exactly favorable for the Sonozaki family. If Oryo shows concern over that particular problem, hearing that, somebody who attended the family council would be helpful. As a result, Oryo's wish would be granted. However, neither Oryo or anybody else would know who actually did it. With this kind of clever little ploy, the Sonozaki family was able to manipulate events even though they had their hands laid out on the table. Then, that means that somebody who was at the family council was the culprit? Or there's the possibility that there was never a culprit in the first place. Oreo herself in that room full of people didn't explicitly say that somebody pulled off the kidnapping. She was just giving her opinion. It was an odd and unpleasantly secretive way of doing things. Were they involved or weren't they? I couldn't see beyond the veil. This much, however, I could say with certainty. This kidnapping was an ironclad secret. No matter how high a position somebody was in, even they wouldn't know about it. If there was somebody who would know about it, they would be connected to public safety. In other words, one of us. The only other options were people connected to the case itself. Including the minister, there would be people affected by the incident. Or the people that committed it. In any case, there was no way an old household in a place removed from Tokyo by over 6 hours of highway travel should know about it. Them knowing it all was already strange. My suspicions began to accumulate, like falling snow. That's as much as Oreo said in regards to the kidnapping. Hopefully what you wanted to find out was in there. After this, it's up to you. I don't know what kind of work you're doing, but if you're going up against the Sonozaki family, you best prepare yourself. Oishi might be fearless, but even he's been attacked 2 or 3 times. He hasn't been wearing it lately, but at one point he was wearing a stab-proof vest while off duty. Oh? Thanks for the warning. I'll be careful. You speak pretty well. Are you from Tokyo by any chance? Huh? What's your point? Investigators were always close to danger. It was best not to divulge any information on myself. Your job! Could you possibly be someone from the Metropolitan Public Safety Division? I couldn't remain silent here. It would be the same thing as admitting it. Huh? No way! This wasn't accounted for in the money I got from the boss. But as somebody who's played at the same table today, I'll give you this one as a freebie. After Oreo talked about the kidnapping, there was one other topic that came up. Another topic that Oreo brought up, and right before he told me this, Sato-san asked if I was from the Metropolitan Public Safety Division. In other words, what those 2 things meant caused a chill to run out my spine. So you see, that in order to investigate the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, there is word that there will be an investigator from public safety dispatched all the way from Tokyo. An investigator from public safety? They can't be reckless and make a big deal over the kidnapping, so it seems the Metropolitan Public Safety Division is investigating this on their own. Ain't that grand? What is it? Rika, who had been drawing the entire time and was completely uninterested in the conversation up until now, looked at Oreo with an interested face as soon as the topic of public safety came up. Did the Metropolitan Police come? Oh, so Rika-chama knows about the Metropolitan Police Department? That's very admirable. Who came? Is there anybody that knows what kind of guy from public safety came here? Mion's father raised his hand slightly. I heard that it's a nice young piece of fresh meat. Fresh meat? Is it nice and tender? Yeah, it is. Fresh meat. Mion's father smiled wryly as he answered Rika's question. Tender and tasty? Yeah. Tender and tasty! Rika smiled with interest. Why did Rika suddenly act interested only when it came to this topic? That was a question that apparently nobody had the answer to. Does Rika-chama know something about this man? I don't know. After her rather flat reply, Rika buried herself underneath Oreo's futon again. But when she buried herself there, Rika no longer started drawing. Instead, she was making the expression like she was deep in contemplation. What shall we do about him, mother? Mion's father posed the question. He had the type of uncouth expression on his face, indicating that, given the order, he could snuff the problem out at any time. He came all the way to Hinamizawa. Let him take it easy for a little while. So you're saying to just let him go around as he pleases? Mion's father asked in response. Oreo smiled thinly as she responded. Leave him alone. But if he starts causing too much mischief. When that happens, don't hold back. I don't enjoy being taken lightly. Is what they talked about, apparently. It couldn't be that you're that fresh meat from the Metropolitan Police, are you? It couldn't be. The sensation of cold, bristling fear began to crawl its way up my back. This family council took place last night. In other words, yesterday. Then today, when I was dressed up as a tourist headed toward Hinamizawa, my cover was already blown. When I remembered that the first person I met when I got to the bus stop, I couldn't breathe. The person at the family council who expressed interest in the man being dispatched from the Metropolitan Police, Rika Furude. And then the person who was waiting for me the whole time in the bus shelter, Rika Furude. It was an unthinkable image. No, it was a delusion. When we met at that bus shelter, did Rika-chan already know my true identity? Did she know that I was Akasaka, dispatched from the Metropolitan Police Department, and come to meet me? Then, including Mayor Kimiyoshi, every villager that I met, everybody knew but just pretended not to? Because Audio had given instructions not to interfere? Thinking about it logically, it didn't seem possible. I met quite a number of people. If there's people that are good at acting, then there's people who are bad at hiding things. If there was that many people, then there should have been somebody among them who knew I was from public safety and couldn't hide their hostility. However, I didn't feel any presence like that. But then, even still... Why did Audio tell them to leave me alone? Was it because if they were careless about it, it would only raise more suspicion? Or was it because they believed a rookie like me wouldn't be able to find anything? Akasaka is a coward. I recalled that strange voice which could only make me believe that Rika-chan had been possessed. That unknown entity, no matter how you looked at it, knew my true identity from the get-go. And then, how did it warn me again? That's right. It warned me to hurry up and go back to Tokyo. Instead of the realistic worry that the Onigafuji Guardians had discovered my identity, the absurd worry brought on by the unknown girl stuck with me more. What exactly was that girl? What was the thing I would eventually regret? That mysterious girl, Rika Furude. Let's stop this. Everything I was thinking of right now is merely conjecture. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I'll report everything I heard right now to HQ and await further orders. There was no mistaking that the possibility the Onigafuji Guardians were related to this case was there, and that the fact that my cover was blown meant I was in a precarious position. But as everybody at HQ was already extremely busy, they might not be able to spare the support. Is that everything? If you want, I can drop you off wherever you like. Sorry. In that case, the station where we originally met, please. A rural road or even a street light was rare. I couldn't see anything. I wasn't aware of anything but the asphalt that was lit up by the headlights. Outside of that light, was it simply darkness? Or was there something lurking there, waiting to strike? I had to think I drew the short straw here. I wanted to go back to Tokyo. For some reason, the voice of the girl warning me to go back to Tokyo still lingered in my head. Okay, that's chapter. The investigation runs aground. What's in the box? Glint in the demon's eye. Achievement unlocked. Mahjong Prodigy. Let's view the new tips. Yeah, yesterday when we first met at the restaurant in Ginza, that topic popped up. That's overstepping their boundaries, isn't it? They're meddling too much with public safety. If they keep doing that, they're going to set a bad precedent. It seems that Minister Inukai is openly uncomfortable about the way public safety is doing things. The Vice Minister is probably going to say something to that effect during Monday's debate session. But what can you do? We can only have the director addressed as the Vice Minister. That's why we pay him the big bucks. Well, if it comes to that, they're going to ask him for proof that the minister is being threatened. Sometimes I don't know what side he's on. If he's not on ours, then what? Well, he's probably getting some pressure from the minister. We'll probably just have to proceed with the investigation while he sweats it out in the Vice Minister's office and buys us some time. He might get so wrung out to dry that all that'll be left are dregs, though. So, how's the investigation going? All the juicy leads I was pinning my hopes on turned out to be duds. Honestly, I'm at a loss. There are reports that the Hinamizawa Dam project has been showing up a lot lately in the Ministry's press releases, so what about that? Well, when you say showing up, but it's really more of a very slight feeling that something's strange. He just happened to mention it during his speech at the prefectural forum, so it just might have been something that he was mentioning because it was relevant at the time. If I remember correctly, a local organization there is protesting quite violently, no? The Onigafuji Guardians? I think Akasaka-kun was investigating that. I think those guys could possibly be behind what's happening now. Even if we can't say there's anything overtly suspicious about them, it might not be prudent to remove them from the picture. Akasaka-kun reported in passing that he couldn't deny that possibility. Then isn't there merit in investigating them? We're going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, so if they're one of the suspicious groups that are left, we'll eventually have to. Well, they're not the only group we should investigate, right? If we're just talking about groups that are as suspicious as Onigafuchi, there's quite a few of them. We don't have the men, the time, or the money for it all. I'll try asking for more details from Akasaka-kun. I feel like we should pay some extra attention to this Guardians. He's reported that he's established a rapport with the villagers. It also seems that he's collaborating with the local police. Keep your contact with Akasaka-kun on the down low. Also, if there's anything in his info that merits investigation, it's possible we can send reinforcements. Got it. Ah, sorry. Chief Kataoka! There was a phone call from the director. Should I transfer it over here? Ah, no, it's okay. I'll head over there. Yes, hello? What's in the box? Do you believe that there are choices in life? There are many people who lament the following. If there only existed points in life when there were clear choices to make, we would be able to scrutinize those carefully and make decisions that would lead us to a better future. Every time I hear people lament as such, I cast it off as a rather trivial worry. Even if you were given a clear choice, it wouldn't be meaningful at all, and there wouldn't be any such path to a better future. Is this hard to understand? Then let's pretend that in front of you there are two strange boxes. In other words, you have two clear choices. Do you open the red box or the blue box? A lot of things would be uncertain even with that choice, wouldn't they? If you don't have the option of opening neither, then your choice boils down to the natural impulse of opening the box that holds the better result for you. Then, after examining the shape and features of each, and pondering a great many things, you have to pick either the red or the blue. If this was you, which box would you open? Red or blue? If you were to go by their traditional meanings, then red would be a dangerous, threatening color. However, that doesn't automatically mean that it would be calm and relaxing inside the blue box either. In fact, it might even be that the colors are a trap, make you wary of the red box, and have you open the blue. A trap? Could it be the contents of the box aren't a reward, but rather a penalty? See? Now you're at a loss. You're so conflicted over the choice between red and blue that you started wishing there was an option to open neither and just leave. But there isn't. You have to open either the red box or the blue box. Oh, I forgot to say this, but if you choose one box, the other will disappear. So you'll never know the contents of the box you don't open. I'll just put that rule at the end there for you. Now, why don't you choose? The red box or the blue box? It's alright, you won't lose anything by picking either one. Come on now. Well then. I have dice right here, I suppose. Let's roll randomly. Nah, I want to pick the red box. Oh, this isn't a jump scare or something. Have you thought about it? In the end, you chose this color, didn't you? As soon as you chose, the other box disappeared. So you can give up on the contents of that one, okay? That's the rule. Now open up the box you chose. Inside the box there was a piece of caramel. I know you're a little disappointed. Well, that's only natural. No matter how you look at it, it looks like you drew the dud. The correct box might have had a bar of chocolate in it for all you know. No, in fact, something incredible, like a pair of tickets to Hawaii might have been in there. But even if you wanted to verify that, the other box has already disappeared. There's no way you can check now. But if you think about it from an optimistic point of view, just maybe the other box was empty, and this box was the winner. And being satisfied, or perhaps not, with such a cheap prize, you pop it into your mouth and start chewing it happily. So what did you think in the end? If you were given a second chance, would you try to open the other box? But unfortunately, the chance to choose between the red box or the blue box has come and gone, never to be seen again. The chance to change your selection will never come. Don't your parents often say, every choice you make in life only happens once, so choose carefully? See? Choices aren't that great after all. Aren't you a little disillusioned now? I'm pretty sure that was the game's creator talking directly to us, because he got complaints from people about a lack of choices in Higurashi. I'm curious though, Higurashi, what's in the box? It looks like the order you actually can go back and it will do extra dialogue. I kind of can't be bothered. It's something to do with the other one is just gum, but also if you open one, then it slightly changes the dialogue of the other. So I don't know. Basically, it's to show that it's pointless. The Stanley Parable. Yes. So the wake will be from 6 p.m. tomorrow, and the service will be the day after from noon until 1. The venue will be Okinomiya Ceremony Hall. I see. It's Deputy Mayor Ikazawa's grandson's funeral we're talking about. We have to pay our respects. Mion, I'll have you go in my stead. Okay. Got it. Should I wear mourning clothes? How much should I bring for the funeral offering? You can go in your school uniform. Make sure you button it up properly. For the money, 100,000 yen. They've done a lot for us. Mion quietly whistled in awe at the exorbitant amount of money her grandmother was offering. Ikezawa-san's been a prudent person ever since his days as head of the Okinomiya Municipal Office. Even if those government types paid me a visit, they'd always stay outside. But whenever I ordered Ikezawa-san a cup of tea, he'd come inside and carefully listen to what I had to say. He always lent a proper ear to what people had to say. Others should learn from a person like him. The two guests made a show of nodding, making it clear they were paying attention as Audio reminisced. The sight of them trying not to get on Audio's bad side was humorous enough to elicit laughter from Mion occasionally. How young was the Deputy Mayor Ikezawa's grandson when he died? 11 years old, apparently. Audio closed her eyes and shook her head lightly, lamenting the loss of such a young life. If I recall correctly, he said he only had one grandchild. How sad. There's nothing worse for a parent than outliving their offspring. You're really nice to other people, Granny. If Shion and I died, would you be this sad? Don't be stupid. Saying something like that is bad luck. Having got the reaction she expected, Mion cackled. The two guests, unsure if they were supposed to laugh along, instead forced awkward smiles. We'll take our leave for today, then. We'll be by tomorrow evening at 5 to pick you up. Until then, please excuse us. After bowing their heads repeatedly, the guests left by the front door. Mion saw them off, waving her little hand goodbye. They're gone. It must be rough for them to pay you a courtesy visit, Granny. It would have been fine if they just broke the news over the phone. While it was true that Audio Sonozaki was a central person for both her relatives and the residents of Hinamizawa village as a whole, as a voting bloc they numbered in the several thousands, It wasn't hard to imagine the mayor would try to pander to her. Unlike Mion, however, Oreo was looking up longingly at the sky from the veranda. What's the matter? Are you going senile? I just thought that no matter whose grandchild it was, I'd feel sorry for them. Saying that, she let out a deep sigh. Mion was let down, as normally her grandmother would have scolded her for her attitude. Mion, you know, that minister's grandson, how long has it been since he was abducted? 4 days, maybe? Oreo let out another deep sigh. He may be the grandchild of our bitter enemy, but I still feel sorry for him. Really? That's enough of a warning. We should bring this to an end soon. The playful expression drained from Mion's face, leaving behind a stern one. And then, as if to ascertain Oreo's will, looked into her eyes. Oreo, expressing her intention with only those eyes, looked back into Mion's. I want some tea. Could you call for some? Some of that chocolate, too. Mion gave a small nod, then turned around. Shimiko-san, are you there? Grandma wants some tea. Could you prepare some? From far away, a voice responded in the affirmative. Mion, after confirming she'd been heard, picked up the phone and began dialing. Hello? This is Mion. Yeah. Is my father there? Huh. Oh, I see. Okay. Alright, save load. I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then I noticed that the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call. Akasaka-san! Good morning, it's Oishi. Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake. Hello? Good morning. Could it be you just woke up? Even though you're on assignment, it's still not good to be asleep during regular business hours. You're absolutely right. I'll be more careful in the future. I have another tidbit that might make you wake up even more. There was something interesting mixed in with the lost and found at the Hinamizawa police box. Lost and found? Let's leave the details for when you get here. You think you'll be able to make it before noon? No, I'll be there right away. Oishi already knew what my mission was. Since Oishi said it was something that would wake me up, it was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Hinamizawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on the trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I pulled on my jacket and hailed a taxi, heading towards the Okinomiya police station. Oh, you're here! The genius mahjong player has arrived. My apologies for being late. So, exactly what popped up? With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressed him to get to the point. Oishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance. Like I said earlier, something arrived from the Hinamizawa police boxes lost and found this morning. Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to the Okinomiya station after the paperwork was filled out. Oishi pulled out a plastic bag from a drawer and laid its labeled contents on the desk. Is that a wallet? Indeed. There was small change inside, but no bills. We thought that a pickpocket threw it away after pulling out the contents. At first. I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, it would have to be something dramatic, like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. That would be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there were probably initials written on the wallet. Like the initials of Toshiki Inukai, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that, at this point I didn't suppose that this wallet was something that could get Oishi so excited. Oishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel that this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Oishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the back. As I had imagined, there were initials engraved there. But it was slightly more detailed than what I had thought, with Toshiki I marked on it. Oishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? We can confirm that from that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. This wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's overeagerness. First of all, there was absolutely no way in this distant locale that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Onigafuchi Guardians wasn't related to the case in the first place. So there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. Why I wanted to decide that was the case, even I didn't really know. Even though what should have been a top-secret case was leaked before I'd even been dispatched. In this situation, how could I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay more attention to this wallet? Gaming screen mirroring device. I don't know what you're saying. It had only been a couple days since I arrived in Hinamizawa, but in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have become just a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. Oishi opened the wallet's zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Oishi, from that jumble, pulled out a folded card. Pardon me. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name Toshiki Inukai and the age. A perfect match. The dentist's location was in Tokyo. There was no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo inside show up in Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Or maybe a villager on vacation to Tokyo who just happened to pay a visit to the dentist? No, it had to have fallen into somebody's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Toshiki Inukai. It was as if it just wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus. See? I felt a shiver of electricity run out my spine. My pulse quickened, and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was probably slack-jawed and spaced out, with a slovenly look on my face. Did you get information from the dental office? That's your job, Akasaka-san. I didn't go that far. When did this wallet show up? The person who picked it up was a villager. They did so yesterday, it seems. Not that. I mean, when was this wallet dropped? It rained here last week, exactly 7 days ago. It doesn't look like the contents are water damage, so the longest it would probably be 6 days. Does anybody else at the station have knowledge of the existence of this wallet? The officer who first encountered it at the Hinamizawa police box, and also the 2 or 3 people in charge of the lost and found. Other than that, it's just me and you. If it's involved in a classified case, it'd be bad to talk about, wouldn't it? I don't intend to wag my tongue. May I borrow a phone? Go ahead. Dial 0 to get an outside line. I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and cards inside the wallet were all from all around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it off as all a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have a much greater meaning. Hello, sorry to keep you waiting. This is Nakagawa Dental Office. Hello, this is the Okinomiya Police Department. I have a misplaced wallet here and I'm trying to get in contact with the owner. Would you be able to help me? Inside the wallet there was an examination card from your office. Yes, the name is Toshiki Inukai. If I give you the number on the card, would you be able to look up the phone number? Yes, thank you. If you could. Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it. Yes, hello. Yes, go ahead. I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with Oishi. Oishi looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the end of the line was reading out the number as though doing so straight from my notebook. It seemed that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I found that was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally handed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thrum on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew that it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words. Got it. We'll dispatch several people as reinforcements. They should be able to make it there by evening. Akasaka-kun, please continue with your investigation of the area. Get some information on the spot where the wallet was found. Kano-san will select some people and head directly there. The fact that he was sending Kano, the lead investigator here, meant that the chief had decided there was a possibility that the Onigafuchi Guardians were somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified with the evidence with his own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical about it. How'd it go? It seems that HQ is sending reinforcements. I was ordered to investigate the area. Where was the wallet dropped? Around Takatsudo, apparently. This is Okinomiya. All the way over here, this is Hinamizawa. Then even further upstream, way up around here, is Takatsudo. Oishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing the locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was. There's hardly anybody living in the area around Takatsudo. It was deserted a long time ago. It's littered with abandoned houses, so it's really quite desolate around there. Oishi-san, can I ask you to guide me to Takatsudo? Yeah, I don't mind. You can't really get in and out of Hinamizawa as you please by yourself, after all. Of course, I'll have to make you wear the cap and mask again. That Oishi had agreed to accompany me was very reassuring. If Sato-san's info was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that the fresh meat dispatched from the public safety was the tourist that had visited the village yesterday. In other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. The Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway. There wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you would call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Those several conditions made the area all the more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that Onigafuchi Guardians, or somebody hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. They even knew so much as how the Public Safety Division was operating. The case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. In that case, there was a possibility that the enemy was lying in wait. To dive alone into enemy territory surrounded by enemy territory, to say the least, required an amount of courage, nay recklessness, that I just did not have. Without your company, Oishi-san, I wouldn't be able to step into the village so easily. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Honestly, I thought you would ask for more money. Well, if we're being honest, Hinamizawa isn't exactly a place I like to go to. I'd at least appreciate it if you paid for the cab fare. Still, it's not a request I can refuse from a friend that's played at the same table as me. Oishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. Oishi grinned as he pounded me. It struck me that he just didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty towards his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture. Well then, shall we hurry up and get going? If the enemy knew that the police had obtained the wallet, then they would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose. But Oishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket. What are you doing? Well, just a precaution. If you want me to poke the beehive to get your honey, I have to be rather well prepared, you see. Do you want to put one on too? What Oishi pulled from the drawer below the desk was a stab-proof vest. His name was Toshiki Inukai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inukai. There was only one reason for him being here. If you didn't include gym or art class, his grades were above average. That was the result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister. But he also knew that not too many people were that interested in their relationship. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather, or to call on the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what kind of work the Minister of Construction did than your average Joe. What that entailed was that when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why, the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew that this was one of those occasions. He understood that he wasn't being treated as Toshiki Inukai, the person, but rather as Toshiki Inukai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was the result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax, if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with a terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while of being tied up and only able to stay lying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine that there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 of the most important people in Japan. That was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And as an apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather, he wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson. Maybe even putting aside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave into the culprit's demands if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, an inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. That feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. What he thought of first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds, beat up the bad guys, then hand him over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from all the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, then stinging like a bee to bring them all down. In the end, it was nothing more than his silly little fantasy, but with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for the long period of time he was tied up. His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually, he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then he realized that none of them were a solution. Yes, he wanted to do something for his grandfather who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing that he could least forgive, and also the most vexing. And then he noticed. There was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was, to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly, and they made sure he was fed well enough. Meaning, at most, he was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully or kill him out of spite. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage. and carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Toshiki Inukai had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with a sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't actually do much to block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage, even when his captors spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking that he couldn't hear their conversation, talked about all sorts of things without any reservations. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this wasn't Tokyo. It seemed that this was quite a distance away, and on top of that, in the countryside, nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school of running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario there. His ultimate goal was to find somebody who would help him. If somebody who fit that description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains. A place where you couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a little while, he returned to his original scenario, imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he read, and beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played those delusions out in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to the hospital or bring a doctor to him. They would probably be reluctant to do that, but he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance that something happened, like him dying occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. His captors at first took that as a sign that he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him there while he was still blindfolded, but he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, only clutched at his abdomen as he writhed in agony. Hey, what's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? He still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking the question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself. What's the matter? Yeah, the kid's clutching at his stomach. Must be a stomachache or something. His captors looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while another laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it. What's wrong, boy? Your tummy hurt? His ears are plugged, so he can't hear you. Well, that's a problem. We got any medicine that works on stomach pain? Might want to go to the pharmacy and buy some? When it comes to stomach pain, there's a bunch of different meds, isn't there? As long as we don't know the cause, we shouldn't just buy him any old medicine. He's old in his stomach, maybe he's just constipated. If you buy him some medicine for that, maybe it'll calm him down. Won't kill him if we're wrong, either. Don't decide something like that on your own. It might be appendicitis or something. My uncle suddenly got it a while ago. That was pretty scary. One of the captors leaned over beside the boy, who was bent over in agony. I feel sorry for the kid. Oh, his whole body's covered in sweat. Is it your stomach? Does it hurt? Hey, if it hurts, you shouldn't clutch at it so tightly. It'll only make it worse. Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently lit his shirt right up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see their reaction to his scar. But his captors were taken aback, and judging from their momentary silence, he had obtained the reaction he was looking for. Hey, this is bad. This scar, it's not that old. Does that boy have a fever? There a thermometer around? No way we have one. But that's a lot of sweat. Yeah, his forehead feels pretty hot, I think. I've heard that under prolonged stress, old wounds can be aggravated. Then what do we do? Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. What's that a reference to? Then what do we do? Are you saying the medicine won't work? We don't know what surgery the scar was from, but in any case, this is bad. In the worst case, it could be fatal. Pepto-Bismol, I see. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Maybe we should have a doctor take a look at it? At this rate, there's a chance that he might suddenly die on us. Toshiki Inukai, with those few words, knew that the situation was progressing exactly as he had envisioned it, and snickering to himself on the inside, pressed his act even further. He didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicked and were running around like chickens with their heads cut off at this troublesome turn of events. Should we take her to the clinic? No, that's no good. It's probably better if the doctor came here. Dr. Irie, you mean? Is that okay? Will that be alright? It'd be worse if anything happened to the hostage. Nothing we can do. It's an emergency. One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another of the men, completely shaken up at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as the doctor wasn't an accomplice, that doctor was his goal. He was someone he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was from that nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape that was covering his eyes and ears was torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag that made it hard for him to breathe was also removed. Are you alright, kid? We're bringing a doctor to you right now. Just hold on for a bit. The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now how is he going to ask for help, and how is he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind. I think you know this already, but don't say anything unnecessary to the doctor. We don't want to hurt you or anything. You understand that, right? Toshiki Inukai nodded while feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there was no reason to panic. If he failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of a car approaching once again, the sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut, the sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face. Who's he? He's not one of the kids from the village, is he? The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly. That's got nothing to do with you, Doc. For a while, the doctor and the captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further. I'm concerned about this old surgical scar. What kind of operation was it? We don't know. I should really bring him back to the clinic. Doc, we really can do that. The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads at the notion. It was a fleeting hope, but it was only natural that the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful stare was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness. Are you alright? I'm a doctor. When was this surgical scar from? Last year. During the winter. From an accident. An accident. I see. This is a problem. He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out some way to keep this going and tell the doctor that he was being confined and needed help. I'm going to touch the affected area, okay? If it hurts, tell me where. Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Toshiki Inukai, faking this illness was the performance of a lifetime. Young doctor jump scare? Nah. He just walked out. It's not a jump scare. Hey, good work, everyone. I know it's hot, but please do your best. If you catch anybody illegally dumping, please contact someone immediately. We'll act quickly. Thank you for your cooperation, Oishi-san. Please. A gap wide enough for a single car was opened up in the barricade. Oishi, showing his gratitude, or perhaps a threatening attitude, with a short beep on the horn, rolled the car forward through the checkpoint. This time, my appearance was the very embodiment of the word suspicious. A baseball cap, mask, and sunglasses. On top of that, even though it was sweltering, I was wearing a hoodie. Any respectable police officer would be loath to not stop me for questioning. I had meant to be overcautious, knowing full well that my face was known, but it might have already been too late for that to have any use. Using that as an excuse, I doffed the unbearably hot hoodie and windbreaker, ripped off the mask and hat, and threw them in the seat behind me. Oh my, is that okay? With a cheap little disguise like this, they probably figured it out anyways. That just might be the case. Oishi, probably thinking that my unexpected behavior was funny, continued to laugh. The beautiful and pristine scenery of Hinamizawa spread out before me. The village itself would have been quite beautiful if it weren't for the complicated circumstances surrounding it at the moment. I would absolutely love to take Yukie here for a drive one day. Come to think of it, I didn't get a chance to call her last night. I played around with the idea in my head. But in reality, this village wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had heard everything at the prefectural headquarters. At the heart of this village, the intelligence network that the three families wielded was, due to blood ties and regional relationships, unbelievably well organized. Their net spread not just around Hinamizawa itself, but encapsulated the entirety of the city of Shishibone as well. Doff, yeah. When I first heard that, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I didn't take it completely seriously. How could a local organization out in the boonies here have something so grandiose? I couldn't deny that somewhere in the back of my mind I had ridiculed the thought. But not only were they really threatening the minister, but they had demonstrated that they had a complete grasp on our movements, which were supposed to be top secret. They were almost like the secret police that controlled a small Eastern European country like in some spy novel. The villagers here wouldn't bat an eye at getting their hands dirty if it meant fighting the dam project. I also heard something like that at the prefectural headquarters. Now that you mention it, when I first arrived here, Oishi also said that this place was a war zone, didn't he? The residents of this village were at the same time freedom fighters. Although by definition they were no different than guerrillas or a militia. They weren't protected by the Geneva Convention, but they also didn't have to adhere to those rules either. This place was more of a quagmire than any legitimate battlefield. A secret war was unfolding. What a quandary, what a quagmire, what a crunch. I could drive along because Oishi was with me, but if I was to leave this car for even something as trivial as looking for a vending machine, there was a chance I wouldn't return. Even though a single shot hadn't been fired, this was a battlefield. No, the reason why bullets weren't flying was simply because it was hard for a civilian to obtain a gun in Japan. So they were probably just equipped with weapons other than guns that were easier to obtain. That was why Oishi was wearing that stab-proof vest, wasn't it? Akasaka-san, are you nervous? The fact that I was apprehensive was, of course, picked up on by Oishi. If he already figured it out, there was no point in trying to deny or hide it. You forget what crunchy guy is called again? The one that I quoted? That was Mao. Of course I am. We're headed into the heart of enemy territory alone, aren't we? I'm worried about if something unlikely happens with just the two of us. Something unlikely? It'll be alright. Isn't everybody in this village our enemy? If everybody gets their story straight, they could murder someone in broad daylight and there wouldn't be a shred of evidence. I'm asking about something like that. This is what the ironclad rule of not barging into a Yakuza office alone was about. If there wasn't a neutral party involved, that area wasn't bound by the laws of common sense. If something happened, you wouldn't be able to prove it, and there wasn't anybody who would take your side. It was pretty much the definition of poking the bear. I have left word that we're headed towards the Hinamizawa area, and in the worst case, we've also got a radio. I know you're scared, Akasaka-san, but it's not that easy to pull off the perfect crime. Did I just pronounce guerrilla like quesadilla? Isn't that how it's pronounced? Gorilla. Or gorilla in America. The hell? But it's like guerra is the Spanish word for war, and then two L's is pronounced as a Y sound, isn't it? Etymology, the Spanish word guerrilla is the diminutive form of guerra, war, yeah. So why the fuck do we pronounce it as gorilla in English? I'm not gonna fucking say that. That's stupid. I'm gonna say guerrilla. Anyway. Well, of course that doesn't mean we can let our guard down either. Akasaka-san, you're too worked up over this. You were more relaxed the last time we came up here together, weren't you? Laughing it off, Oishi thumped his chest and grinned, as if to say I could depend on him. Well, if it gets really iffy... This comes with having the badge. Oishi made a motion by sticking out his index finger. It was undoubtedly the image of a gun. Will it be of any use? If you're not afraid of dealing with the aftermath after you shoot, it's actually very reassuring. An officer's gun was only for show. If you really wanted to fire it, there were quite a number of stipulations, and you had to be prepared for the long probationary period afterwards. That definitely wasn't worth it, so even if an officer did unholster his gun, there wasn't one who would actually wanted to pull the trigger. Yeah, see, it is weird. Like, I guess for the dialogue I'll say Guria, but like, I'm gonna say Guria in real life. It's like, yeah, I guess that is how people say it, but to me, that's like pronouncing paella as paella, even though, just because, oh, everyone says it like that. That sounds fucking stupid. It should be paella. Because that's how it is in Spanish. Like, it's obviously a Spanish word to me, so it should be pronounced Spanish. Anyway. Akasaka-san, are you carrying one? One of these? Well, yeah. You ever fired it? I have. For training, though. Well, I guess that'd be true. Well then, have you, Oishi-san? Me? Nah, there's no way. What was this? I thought he was laughing at me because he had experience. The two of us laughed together. I've also never pointed the barrel at anybody. I've looked down the barrel of a gun a few times, though. Just being made to look down the barrel like that is enough to shorten your lifespan by about 3 years. Even if he had never fired a gun before, you couldn't even begin to compare the amount of experience Oishi had over me. At a time like this, I could only marvel again at how reliable Oishi seemed. Come to think of it, I didn't want to come this way in the middle of the day. But there's no way for a car to get through other than here. Akasaka-san, just in case, put on the mask again to hide your face, please. Everybody you've ever heard has pronounced it paella. Oh no, I've never heard anyone say it like that. And maybe it's like a British American thing, but in England, everyone says paella, and it makes me cringe so bad. What's the matter? Can you not hear it because the air conditioning is too loud? I'll turn it off. Try opening the window. When I opened the window, a blast of hot air blew inside, and then I could hear angry yelling coming from far away. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us. Everyone you've ever heard it was Clamantha's mom on a single episode of Disney Channel's Fish Hooks. Okay, I see. Anyway. At that moment, the forest gave way on either side of us, and our view expanded suddenly. And there could be seen the Hinamizawa Dam construction grounds, the very front line for Hinamizawa Village. We're absolutely opposed to the construction of the Hinamizawa Dam! The crackling blare of someone's voice sounded over an enormous loudspeaker. The roar of angry voices continued to rumble. The incredible volume had become a veritable sound cannon, spewing out its ammunition. The prefabricated side office was surrounded by 2 sets of high fences laced with barbed wire. Lined up in front of those fences were riot police in their vehicles, and surrounding it all were the villagers. They howled out their protests against the dam as a single entity. Oh, there's not too many of them today. We're in luck. That's not too many? Yeah, when there's a lot of them, the crowd reaches as far as the road. You wouldn't even be able to inch forward in a car. At first, due to their overwhelming intensity, it looked to me like there was more people than there actually was, but upon closer inspection, there were at most 50 to 70 of them. But the 6 or 7 propaganda trucks lined up that looked like they belonged to a band of thugs were a strange enough sight. The villagers were also wearing helmets and bandanas, as well as covering their faces with masks, adding to the oddity of it all. The propaganda trucks, after betraying their chorus, had their volume turned up even higher and began to flood the area with sutras. To say that the noise was downright violent wouldn't be an understatement. From this distance, it was still this loud. The glass in the office was probably rattling from the noise. They can't do anything in there but take it. Those riot squad guys, every one of them is wearing earplugs, but they're still having their hearing damaged. Poor sobs. Can't you do something about it with noise ordinance laws? Our prefecture doesn't have any laws regarding noise ordinance. Also, those are sutras, right? We can't regulate religious activities. Those guys are pretty smart. That's what I think Oishi said. Actually, no matter how tightly the window was shut, the booming sound of the sutras still filled the car. I couldn't even hear what Oishi, who was sitting right next to me, was saying. As the car approached the line of propaganda trucks, the blare became difficult to bear. It wasn't enough to just plug my ears with my fingers. I had to hold my head to keep my skull from splitting apart. If I had seen this terrifying energy sooner, I would have probably understood what Hinamizawa village was much quicker. Now I knew. They wouldn't blink an eye at sacrificing themselves in order to protect their hometown. So goddamn noisy. Shut up, shut up, shut up! My head throbbed and felt like it was going to split apart. My eardrums crackled, and on top of it all, I felt like I was going to throw up. With the road crowded with the throng of squatters, the propaganda trucks, and the riot police's vehicles, it was in no way easy to get by. Even if you tried to shoo the squatters with the car horn, they were also wearing earplugs, oblivious to noises from the outside world, and wouldn't easily move. The car could only inch forward at a snail's pace. Even then, the car eventually got through, starting to leave the tumultuous noise behind. Hey, the old guy that was playing mahjong with us last night. Remember him? I remembered that there was an older person who didn't exactly mince words. The guy that Oishi called Old Man. There was someone like that. You see, he's the foreman of the main construction site. He's probably holed up in that prefab building trying to work while irritated out of his mind. Poor fellow. You wouldn't be able to stand it if it's like that every day. Yeah, there's no end to the number of people who can't handle it and quit. But every time that happens, their wages go up, so I won't say it's in vain. Even having to deal with all that noise and hostility, they still made a wage that Oishi found enviable. Damn it, these guys. Can they hear or can't they? A group of squatters were in the way of the car. Oishi, sufficiently annoyed, laid into the horn, but there was no indication that they were moving anytime soon. In this din, could they not even hear a car horn? Or did they hear it and were being malicious? If there were any riot police nearby, they would have made people move, but it just so happened there weren't any around here. Jeez. Wait just a minute. Oishi opened up the door. The hot air and even more heated roar of the crowd spilled into the car. Oishi said something as he grinned widely, but I couldn't hear what it was. He was getting them to move. Something like that? Oishi stepped out of the car and closed the door. The din faded slightly. I stared blankly as Oishi headed towards the group and started some sort of conversation. Maybe we'd find the minister's grandson at Takatsudo. At the very least, I wanted to find him there. Find him and slip the cursed bonds of this incomprehensible village. I could only pray. At that moment, a shadow was suddenly cast over me. Somebody was standing right outside the passenger side window, blocking the sunlight. I spun around, looked up, and realized who the backlit figure was. Huh? It was a girl. It was Rika Furude. The girl stared down at me with a bored look in her eyes. I didn't have any justification for it, but I felt like I'd been found by somebody I shouldn't be found by. To fill the silence, I raised my hand as I mouthed a meek greeting. Of course, there was no way she heard my small voice in this clamor, but even then, she should have seen me wave my hand in greeting. In spite of that, she simply stared down at me with a cold look on her face. At that moment, the noise and heat spread throughout the car once again. Oishi had returned to the driver's seat. Taking a look, the group that were blocking the road had started to move aside while glaring our way. Sorry to keep you waiting. Shall we go? Oishi registered the figure of the girl behind me. One of the villagers came over and picked her up, in a manner of, "It's dangerous, so get away." It was then that she whispered one or two words. However, I couldn't hear any of it. Well then, let's go. I'm going to gun it, okay? But of course, still within the speed limit. As if to shake off the still audible angry voices, Oishi floored the gas. Along with the roar and the din and the shouting, the villagers and the girl quickly disappeared behind us. As soon as we're through here, we're in Takatsudo. Are you okay if we end up getting into a firefight? Don't be fumbling with the safety at the last moment, you hear? Oishi laughed mockingly again. I was more concerned with what the girl had said, however, as I was vaguely bothered by it. What was she trying to say with that apathetic and candid expression? Suppose it's normal if you're nervous from here on out, but if you don't deal with it, there's a chance you might do something rash. There was no longer a way to confirm what the girl had tried to tell me. It might have been that the girl who warned me to go back to Tokyo again, or else... Was she saying to me who was here now, ignoring that warning? Even though I warned you. What a fool. I had the feeling she said something like that. If you were to call Hinamizawa a rather lonely village, then Takatsuda was outright desolate. For your everyday city boy like me, I just couldn't understand why anybody would force themselves to live here. There were signs that people had, but they were all covered in dust or enveloped in ivy, indicating that it was all abandoned. People really lived in a place like this, didn't they? Well, it was a long time ago. A remote place like this is pretty rough for old folk to live. And the younger people probably wanted to try living in a more suitable place. If there's nobody left to take the reins, all that gets left is this. Even if I had no personal attachment to the village, seeing the disused buildings made me feel a little sentimental. It seemed that Oishi also felt the same way. Was the wallet found over here? The person who found it must have a good reason to come out to this desolate place. Yeah, there's some villagers who have a field out in the mountains here. They pass by here in the morning and evenings. The villagers who work in the fields walk by here every day? No way. They probably go as far as they can by car. So in the early mornings and evenings, they pass by here and just happen to find a single wallet? They probably did. Where exactly did they say they found it? In a thicket just a bit further ahead. The person who found the wallet just happened to have some stomach cramps and was planning to use the thicket to do his business, it seems. It was there he happened to find it. Probably hoping there was some toilet paper in there. Everything about that story just seems a little too convenient. Right from the discovery of the wallet, I just can't shake the feeling that something's off. I expressed the feeling that I had from the start of the day, quite frankly. It seemed too good to be true, but it was unwavering proof. But it was too perfect, sickeningly so. That was my feeling. You might actually be onto something by saying it's all a little too perfect. Meaning? The truth is, I heard a little something from a friend of mine in the 4th Division, where Oryo Sonozaki referenced the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. She referenced it? It's been several days since the minister's grandson has been kidnapped. Poor boy. It'd be nice if they let him go soon. It seems that old Oryo muttered something like that while on her veranda, and that little musing was conveyed to the various people working deep behind the scenes at the Sonozaki family. Right, I'd heard something earlier from Sato-san, the informant. That's when the leader Oryo had a concern, somebody in the family would be considerate. So, in essence, she gave the order to release the hostage? I see it that way. The wallet being conveniently discovered was just a ploy to hand the boy over to the police. Why would they release the hostage? Well, there's only one reason why somebody would release a hostage, isn't there? What is it? They reached a deal. That would mean the minister promised to halt the Hinamizawa dam project. The dam project will definitely go away. That moment, those words that the girl had said resurfaced in the back of my mind. In the end, it was turning out exactly as she had proclaimed. That young girl knew the circumstances. She knew everything about this kidnapping incident from the beginning to the end. You thought he said my friend in the 4th dimension. Akasaka? The girl unexpectedly called my name. What is it? Go back to Tokyo. Huh? Before long, you will woefully regret coming to this village. That would be an incredibly pathetic thing to see. So I thought I'd warn you right now. Why would I come to regret it? Stop whining. When you tried crossing the road when the don't walk sign was up. Did your parents finish explaining why it was dangerous before pulling you back to the sidewalk? They'd pull you back right away, wouldn't they? They'd pull you back before explaining why it was dangerous, wouldn't they? In other words, it's something like that. The girl, who knew everything from start to finish, had warned me in the beginning. Go back to Tokyo. Akasaka is such a coward. We'll probably find the boy, but what happens afterwards will probably be a bit of a problem. How it'll be a problem, though, is something a single officer like me can't figure out. Do you know a girl named Rika Furude? What I had said was such a non sequitur that Oishi sat in stunned silence for a while. Of course I know her. She's the only daughter of the Furude family, one of the 3 families. What kind of girl is she? Well, well, this was an unexpected name to hear. I'm a bit surprised. Does public safety think that the Furude family smells fishy and wants to keep an eye on them? Share some of that information with me, please. No, it's not like that. It's just something that caught my attention. Well, whatever. It wouldn't do to not answer a question from a friend I've sat at the same table with. I am honored that you call me a friend. So, that little lady is, well, somewhat of a village mascot. She's beloved by everybody in the village. Some of the older folk worship her especially. Worship? I don't know much about it, you see. Girls born in the Furude family have somewhat of a secret implication, it seems. It's one of the local beliefs in Hinamizawa. The living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, or something like it, or so the story goes, apparently. Oyashiro-sama? Now that you mention it, I think I saw Oyashiro-sama written on some of the Alliance's banners. What is Oyashiro-sama, exactly? Ah, it's the name of the guardian deity of Hinamizawa. They believe it'll exact punishment on those who would do ill towards the village. Well, if there was such a convenient god around, the guys at the dam would have long since been done in by divine justice. Luckily, nothing like that has happened to anybody just yet. The grandson of the minister who trifled with the village, as a result of Oyashiro-sama's anger, was... what do they call it again? Oh, right. Onikakshi. The minister's grandson was demoned away. That would probably be how the script is being written. I see. It probably would turn into something like that. Divine punishment wrought by Oyashiro-sama. Then the culprit is the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. That girl? Even I didn't know exactly what I was saying. The fact that Oishi laughed it off was a bit of a relief. Oishi's joyous laughter was so infectious that I began to laugh like an idiot as well. This is unusual. Oishi, after laying into the horn several times, rolled the window down and leaned out, waving his arm in an exaggerated manner. It was a car headed the opposite way. Until now, we hadn't run into any other cars except our own, and of all places, it was at this desolate location. It seemed that Oishi knew the owner of that car. The other car also tripped its horn and came to a stop. Dr. Irie! Good afternoon! The other car's window rolled down slowly, revealing a young man in a white overcoat. He was about my age, or perhaps a bit older. But you really can't judge somebody by their appearance. Why, if it isn't Oishi-san! Good afternoon. Fancy meeting you here. That's my line, Doctor. I never thought I'd see you here. What happened? Oh, nothing. Just a little house call. Oh, really? Was it an emergency? No, nothing quite that serious, thankfully. It's always for the best when the patient gets better without the need of medical care. I'll take my leave here. If I don't get back quickly, my staff will be angry with me. Being the head of a clinic must be tough. Well then, take care. The young doctor named Irie, after gesturing his farewell, drove forwards and soon disappeared around a corner. Oishi also drove forwards, but soon came to a stop again. He pulled out a worn map book from the dash. His expression didn't have an ounce of irreverence. He was perfectly serious. What is it? The clinic shouldn't be making any house calls today. It must have been quite an emergency, or otherwise a patient with some extenuating circumstances. Oishi flipped through the pages, opening up to the map of Takatsudo. After that, he took a look around and started to figure out what our current location was. Are you saying that emergency is suspicious? Didn't I say? There's hardly anybody that lives in the Takatsudo area. The road we're on right now is here. Dr. Irie came from this direction. Having no sense of our surroundings, I couldn't digest anything about the place he was indicating on the map. We're heading towards the spot where the wallet was found. By the way, that's over here. But see? If you're heading to one of the few residences in Takatsudo, it's the wrong road. Meaning, Dr. Irie came from a direction where there are no residents? As long as somebody working in the fields between these mountains didn't collapse. But if somebody collapses and you call a doctor, normally you bring them back with you for a more detailed examination. But just now, Dr. Irie said it was nothing serious. And it didn't seem like anybody else was in the car with him. Uishi didn't say any more than that. I also said nothing more. That doctor just now examined a patient. Close by. Only that. The noisy radio has suddenly gone quiet. The sky had just as suddenly turned an oppressive color. As Oishi mused that it might start to rain, a torrential downpour started, as though trying not to disappoint him. Eventually, Oishi stopped the car. The only sounds to break the silence were the percussion of the rain on the roof and the soft squeak of the windshield wipers. Let's do this a bit hush-hush, shall we? Saying that in a quiet voice, he exited the car without an umbrella, careful not to make any noise. Oishi leaned over, indicating the other side of the thicket. He was pointing to a prefabricated shed and a car that was parked beside it. The car looked obviously well cared for. It wasn't a vehicle that had been left there for several years. What's that shed? It contains equipment used by the forestry service. I heard that they don't go near it except during the summertime. Does that car belong to somebody from the forestry service then? Dunno. It doesn't look like an official vehicle though. Oishi was playing it cool, but my nervousness was gradually increasing. Just in case. Saying that, Oishi returned to the car. I thought he was going to get an umbrella, but he had grabbed the onboard radio instead. Hello, this is Oishi. Do you read? Greetings, greetings. Yes, this is the Okinomiya police station. Oishi-san, we read you loud and clear. Over. I am currently in front of the Forestry Service's equipment shed. Not the one in the direction of Yagouchi, the one in Takatsudo. If you head there from Hinamizawa. Affirmative. Copy that. There are some suspicious people in the shed. Proceeding to investigate. If you don't hear back from me in 5 minutes, get in touch with the local police substation and have them send a cruiser as soon as possible. If you would, please. Understood. Well then, shall we go take a look? Since he was first confined here, he had heard the sound of a car multiple times, so he just thought the far-off sound was more of the same. However, the reaction from his captors was, until now, something he hadn't seen before. They jumped, reacting as if shocked by a jolt of electricity, and pressed against the window, cautiously peering outside. And they stopped. Somebody from the forestry service? This is bad. Nah, looks like a cop to me. One of the captors lifted the boy by his collar and pressed a blade against his cheek. Hey kid, keep quiet for a bit. I think you know this, but if you try and shout, there'll be problems. Toshiki Inukai was sure that the doctor had reported things to the police. He had felt relief when he thought he was saved, but not imagining that his captors would resort to violence when they were cornered, his anxiety remained unabated. What do we do? Gotta buy time. Take the kid and slip out the back. We'll meet back here when the heat's off. One of the perpetrators grabbed the boy by the collar and forced him to stand. Of course, Toshiki Inukai tried to resist by feigning that his illness had been aggravated by this rough treatment, but his captors paid no heed. Bang, bang, bang! The door was violently banged upon. Excuse me? Hello? The door was banged on again. Toshiki Inukai hesitated for a moment to respond to that voice by yelling. However, while he was being indecisive, his mouth was covered, taking that option away from him. The leader of the captors waved at the other to go. The younger perpetrator nodded in response, and while keeping the boy's mouth covered, started heading towards the back door. Hello? Do you need something? How do you do? This is the police. Would you mind opening the door? This sudden rain has us in a bit of trouble. I'll just open... The moment the lock was undone, Oishi forced the door open, and with a gleam of menace in his eyes, he pushed the man aside as he stepped into the room. Then, in the small and empty room, he was able to quickly discern that the boy he was looking for was nowhere to be seen. I heard this was an equipment shed for the forestry service, but there's nothing here at all. There was nothing inside the room that would indicate this was an equipment shed. There was only a mountain of blankets, indicating that somebody was sleeping here, alongside empty food packets strewn about. It's been empty for some time now. Never seen no equipment store around here. But this is the Forestry Service's building, isn't it? Are you from the Forestry Service? But yeah. Police? The two of them glared at each other suspiciously. Both Oishi and the man steadfastly refused to reveal their identity before the other did. The man, judging from the sharp look in Oishi's eyes, realized that it would be hard to talk his way out of this one. No matter what he said, the most time he could buy would probably be only a few dozen seconds. Only the sound of rain filled this tense moment. Just then they heard a sound of a struggle from far off. Oishi had a hunch. There was no doubt that Akasaka, who was circling round back, had run into the perpetrators who were trying to slip away. As Oishi thought that, the man in front of him reacted a moment faster. The man swung with an attack that was more intended to obscure Oishi's vision rather than actually hit him in the face. Seizing his opportunity, the man aimed a kick at Oishi's groin without any hesitation, but he missed his mark and was unable to land that critical blow. The man, trying to pin Oishi, grabbed him by the base of his neck with both hands and fiercely tried to push him down. But as Oishi fell backwards, as if kicking the man upward, he dug his foot into the man's midsection. With that leg acting as a fulcrum, the man was flung by the falling Oishi as if by a circle throw. The two of them squared off in the pouring rain. Isn't this interesting? You wanna go? Oishi, as if trying to cheer himself on, grinned smugly. He then stood up while brushing the mud off himself. Even though he countered the assault, Oishi was getting up rather awkwardly compared to the man who he threw, who swiftly sprang to his feet. Oi-san! Hurry! Akasaka's voice rang out from the distance. Judging from the distress in his voice, he was already engaged in a fight and wanted Oishi to reconvene with him. But Oishi's hands were full as well. Akasaka-san! Sorry, but can you wait a bit? The man raised both fists into a stance that hinted at him being acquainted with karate or some other form of martial art. Of course, Oishi, as an officer of the law, was decently versed in judo. He also had the moxie to have been through his fair share of fights before. Because of that, he could tell that the man in front of him was quite a bit better at fighting than he was. Ah, damn it! Thinking that this was going to be easy just because the order came from the Sonozaki family to release the hostage had been a big mistake. You're pretty good. It's been a while since I got this worked up. Oishi played off the situation like it was no sweat. His opponent, seeing his attitude, took that to mean that Oishi wasn't going to go down easily. The man wildly charged forward, attempting to grab Oishi. If the man managed a successful clinch from his low stance, Oishi would be tackled to the ground and end up being mounted. It was something you saw often in when children fought, but it really was a bad position since you couldn't do much once you were in it. Oishi, responding to that move, also lowered his stance to collide with the man head-on. The moment they clashed, Oishi grabbed the man's lapel. Lapel? Why did I say lapel? As he yanked the lapel upwards, he smashed into the man's solar plexus with the elbow of the same arm. It was a move from Oishi's own personal brand of brawling judo. He then grabbed on with his free hand and attempted to throw his opponent with both hands. But the man lowered his center of gravity and swung his arms in a large arc, entwining them with Oishi's. Not only that, but he had forced both of Oishi's elbows to the outside, and Oishi, now in an awkward position, was in danger of exposing his back with his hand still clutching the man's chest. This guy practiced Aikido or grappling, didn't he? Oishi, cursing the fact that his fingers were twisted into the man's shirt and couldn't get away, released his grip. But he was still in the awkward position of being bent over. And to top it off, at zero range, the man was able to read Oishi's movements completely as he tried to squirm his way into a better position. And then, took the palms of his hands and swiftly clapped them over both of Oishi's ears. Ah! Clapping the ears in any other martial art except for self-defense was basically forbidden. Karate and judo didn't recognize it as a legal technique. It was that much of a simple and dangerous attack. Oishi raised both his hands as he tried to reflexively clutch at his own ears. But before that could happen, the man wrapped his arms around Oishi's neck. His thick biceps clenched firmly around the base of Oishi's neck like a vice. Oishi instinctively thought he was going to be killed. After all, it wasn't hard to believe that a man like this, who was accustomed to fighting, could crush his opponent's neck from this position. But his opponent didn't do that. He had chosen to keep his hold and force Oishi to lose consciousness. That's why Oishi, at that moment, even though his face was twitching, was grinning widely. Even though his opponent had a chance to kill him, he didn't choose to. He was thinking, this guy has no intention of killing me. However, even though that might be the case, the man's hold on his neck was by no means gentle. In no time at all, Oishi's consciousness began to fade. Having the experience of being taken down countless times in judo during his student days, Oishi was utterly resigned to the fact that it was over. Akasaka was finally recovering from the intense pain of being kicked in a rather sensitive area. He had bumped into the captor carrying the boy by the back entrance. He had seen Toshiki Inukai's picture plenty of times, but wasn't able to immediately ascertain if the boy in front of him was a real deal, with his mouth covered in packing tape. Also, with his limited experience, it wasn't hard for him to panic over how to deal with the situation. Of course, the perpetrator didn't overlook this momentary lapse. His kick landed squarely in a critical spot, with Akasaka not even having time to call for help. As the man flung the boy over his shoulder, he headed towards the front of the shed. But upon hearing Oishi's bellowing voice, he gave up on going that direction. He then dashed off towards the forest. As if the weight of the boy slung over his shoulder wasn't even there. Akasaka was lost for a moment. Meeting up with Oishi, who was fighting with the enemy, was by far the safer option. But he couldn't just lose sight of the fleeing man. Akasaka stood up and chased after the captor's back. He ran through a short thicket, branches and fallen leaves crunching underfoot. The tips of branches raked and clawed at him, small scratches inscribing themselves on his body one after another. He kept on stepping into puddles of mud, and his shoes were soon filled with murky water. For Akasaka, traveling through this unexplored forest was, even though this was an emergency situation, extremely unpleasant. Stop! This is the police! As he said that, he regretted it immediately, as it was but a waste of breath. There wasn't a thief in the world that would politely stop when told to by the police. To a city boy like Akasaka, running through this forest was an arduous task. However, it must have been no easy task either for the man carrying the minister's grandson. He neither gained nor lost ground in his pursuit. Akasaka, upon realizing that, gained back a bit of composure. Just keep on chasing him. We're running in the same conditions. In fact, the man running with an awkward stride was at far more of a disadvantage. They couldn't run forever. Eventually, he'd definitely trip and fall. As long as he was being hounded, he would definitely stumble. And soon his wish was fulfilled. Ah! The man who had stepped in something and lost his balance was no longer able to bear the weight of the boy, dropping him. Akasaka, in all honesty, didn't care about the perpetrator at all, just as long as he could ensure the safety of Toshiki Inukai. So if the perpetrator ran off by himself, it was perfectly acceptable. But it seemed that Toshiki Inukai was important to the man as well, and didn't choose to just run away empty-handed. Your power just went out, sorry. Akasaka didn't know what to do in this kind of situation. His first priority should probably be to ensure the safety of the boy, subduing his captor being less important. Grappling with the perpetrator wasn't something he planned on, but most likely it was either do or die. Akasaka's moment of indecision proved to be fatal. The man, aiming right between, or rather for both of Akasaka's eyes, struck out with a jab. Not wanting that, Akasaka raised both his hands to shield his face. At that moment, the man kicked at his unguarded midsection. The pain almost felt like his vital organs were being squeezed out of his body, but he latched onto his opponent's leg. But his opponent didn't hesitate one bit. Leading with his seized foot, the man jumped at Akasaka, applying pressure and pushing him down. Akasaka was unable to withstand that and fell, but under no circumstances was he letting that leg go. The two men fell together in a tangled heap. The man was desperate to pull his leg free of Akasaka, but having fallen in an awkward position was unable to. The two of them rolled around on the ground, floundering about, trying to gain an advantage. But Akasaka, who was holding onto his opponent's knee with both hands, and that opponent, who had complete freedom to move his upper body, were in two completely different situations. The man gained a positional advantage on Akasaka, who was still latched onto his leg and couldn't move away, and pounded full force on his head with both his fists. Not only that, he found a rock nearby and beat it against Akasaka's skull. Twang, 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 twang. The difference between being hit with a fist and being hit with a rock was vast. Akasaka quickly thought of letting go of the man's leg to free his hands to protect his head. But if he let go here, the man would get away. If he didn't dig in here, everything would be for naught. The boy he was trying to save was right there. He was going to save him and go back to Tokyo. If he could do that, then it was goodbye to this freakish village. Bam! Crack! Thud! Without looking, I could tell my forehead had split open and was gushing blood. But I didn't let go of the man's leg. How could I? I won't let go! When the man realized that no matter how much he beat my head, he wasn't getting away, he used both his hands to grab my throat as if to crush my windpipe. I pulled with my head back as a slight form of resistance, but it was of no use. The man's hands enveloped my neck and began to crush it like a vice. It was less about the pain of not being able to breathe, so much as it was choking so hard I felt like I was going to throw up. It felt like my stomach was going to turn itself inside out, but I could only endure it. Damn it, damn it, damn it! My throat hurts! I won't let go, I can't let go! I didn't want to be here. I wanted to resolve this and go back to Tokyo. Go back to Tokyo and talk to Yukie all about our unborn child. We were going to talk about our bright future. I had no intention of loosening my grip. However, it loosened just a bit, and the man's leg came free. The man kicked as hard as possible, and I tumbled backwards. My head was spinning, and I was unable to get up right away. No, I couldn't even put any strength into getting up in the first place. Even so, I couldn't back down. If I let him escape now, this chance would never come again. Even just catching their scent was nothing short of a miracle. If we weren't able to get the minister's grandson back here, there wouldn't be another chance. The man tried to drag the boy to his feet, but the kid was displaying some unexpected resistance, allowing me to get up unnoticed. I grasped the rock the man had just beat me over the head with. Now it's my turn! Yeah! The rock should be able to supplement whatever meager strength I had left, adding more than enough power to my attack. My fist, still wrapped around the rock, dug into the side of the man's torso. It seemed like it hurt it quite a bit. The man rolled around for a bit, clutching his side. Free from the man's grip, the boy hid behind me. Toshiki Inukai-kun, right? I've come to help you. To the boy, those were the words he was waiting for the most. But the crisis was still not over. That was because even though he was still clutching at his side, the man had gotten up again, and had taken a fighting stance. I could see in the man's eyes the resentment at the pain I'd caused him, and the confidence that he could still beat me. If we were to clash head-on again, he might not even stop if my head was split open. Stop resisting! Surrender quietly! You should just hand the boy over! Do you want me to snap your neck? Who would listen to you now? Reinforcements are already on their way. There's nowhere for you to run. The man reacted adversely to the word reinforcements. That was because he now knew that arguing like this wasn't just a waste of time, but put him closer and closer to danger. The whole general area has lost power, then. Realizing that, the man shifted mental gears almost too quickly. Then let's finish this fast! How about this? What? The man pulled from his back pocket was of all things a gun. Of course, I'm a police officer. It's not like I don't know what a gun is, but having one pointed at me was something I'd never experienced before. Was it real? Of course it was. There's no way it would be a replica in a situation like this. Put both your hands behind your head and lay down quietly. Don't get cocky, you villain. I won't do anything you say. You stupid idiot. Do you not know what this is without me shooting you with it? Then shoot. Reinforcements will hear the gunshot and head right over here. Are you stupid? We're in the middle of the forest, and on top of that, it's raining. They'll never hear a thing. As long as he still held that gun, no matter how much I yelled at him, I was at a distinct disadvantage. But I still had a fighting chance. If I were in his shoes, instead of wasting time yelling at each other like this, I would just shoot him and take the boy. That way was the fastest, and would suppress any sort of further resistance from him. But the man was demanding my surrender without having fired a shot, meaning that he either didn't want to shoot or couldn't. In other words, the man in front of me was soft. If I could buy even just a little more time, the factors that would lead to my victory were numerous. Oishi was probably on his way, and the reinforcements we called for before coming here should already be well on their way too. Not only that, they should have contacted the local police box. Without a doubt, somebody stationed in the village would be here much quicker than that. Damn it! Do I have to put a bullet in you to understand how dangerous this thing is? There's no escape. Don't add to your crimes. At that moment, I heard the rustling of foliage and heavy footsteps approaching. If Oishi was coming here, it was a whole new ballgame. The man couldn't have more than one gun. Oishi-san! Over here, over here! Huh? I had thought that time was on my side, but I failed to even imagine that the enemy could also have reinforcements. You could tell the man who had just appeared was one of the perpetrators just by looking at him. What are you doing? If you don't hurry up, the police will get here. Stop lollygagging! Damn it! What happened to Oishi-san? Ah, that chubby fella? He's down for the count. He is? Damn it! The boy, sensitive to the impending danger, curled up behind my back. How could this be? Damn it! Your buddy isn't coming! Serves you right. Shoes on the other foot now. As I backed up against a large tree while still protecting the boy, the second man also pulled out a gun. Won't be saying this twice. Put your hands on your head and lie down. I refuse! Bang! As I shouted in protest, blood erupted from my left shoulder. It took a few moments to register that I had been shot. Compared to the ones from in movies and TV dramas, the first actual gunshot I heard was simple and mundane. In fact, the sound was more akin to the small fireworks I used to buy from this corner store as a kid. There was no comparing the pain. It was a fear you knew only after you'd been shot. Sir? Are you okay? Are you okay? The boy in his confusion tugged at my clothes, agitating the wound even further. I wanted to put on a bold face and reassure him, but my voice was hoarse and had the opposite effect. I'm alright. I've already called for backup. There'll be a full squad here soon. It'll be quicker to put one through your head before the cops get here. Get here. Well, the family said no needless killing, so I'm taking it easy on you. Don't mess with me or I ain't holding back. This was bad. It was very, very bad. The second man was a completely different beast than the first. He had no signs of indecisiveness or mercy. If this man said he'd shoot, he'd shoot. He wasn't somebody that a man like me could buy time from. I really hated to admit it, but at that moment, the image of Yuki's smiling face crossed the back of my mind. I knew what that meant. I was warning myself to not throw my life away over a matter of pride. Of course I didn't want to die here. I was just starting a new life with Yuki, and I wanted to see the face of our soon-to-be-born child. Why should I risk my life for some minister's grandson when I was at such a critical juncture in my own life? Ah! Damn it! Damn it! I needed to stop rambling at myself. So what do I do now? Give up the boy and extend my own life? What a good idea! Everybody's life is precious. My own life was in danger. Nobody would blame me. Ah, god damn it, it hurts! It hurts! If I had known it would be this painful, I wouldn't have played the tough guy. My biggest miscalculation, though, was that the sound of the gunshot was far quieter than I had imagined. If it was only that loud, it would be drowned out by the rain in the forest. It wasn't something that somebody far away could hear. Damn it! Wait, just wait! I don't want to die! And I don't want to kill you! As long as you understand. Don't shoot, okay? Don't shoot! I have a wife waiting for me at home! I don't want to die! I won't shoot as long as you don't yell or nothing. Just quietly put your hands on your head and lie down. Will you really? Will you really? You keep your promise, right? This is a promise between men? I will! It's a promise between men. Keep your promise. Keep it. I'm going to get down on the ground, okay? I'm getting down. I'll keep my promise, so stop pointing that gun at me. You still think you're shooting me, aren't you? You want to shoot me, don't you? When I get down on the ground, you're just going to shoot me in the back of the head, aren't you? I won't. Fine. I'll put it away. I'll put the gun away. It's a promise between men. There. No problem now, right? Yeah, absolutely no complaints. Ah! It was over in a flash. The moment he lowered his gun, Oishi didn't let his chance slip by. Oishi had been assessing the situation for quite some time from behind the two men. But since they had their guns trained on me, he didn't really have a chance to jump in. Seeing the look on Oishi's face indicating that he wanted me to create an opening, I took on that role completely. Oishi forcefully lifted the arm that was holding the gun. He then took the gun from the man's hand in only an instant. The other man, who was a bit slow in grasping what was happening, pointed his gun at them, but with his ally grappling with Oishi, he couldn't pull the trigger. If that man was the one that was wrestling with Oishi at the moment, he might have shot without hesitation. But this man wouldn't shoot. He couldn't shoot. Oishi kicked the other man away, and while aiming the stolen gun with his left hand, pulled out his own. With guns akimbo, he was aiming at both men at the same time. I do believe that's checkmate. It was perfectly played, but heedless of the guns pointed at them, the men shouted, "Scram!" as they scattered away at full speed. It was over in an instant. Those two running away without putting up a fight was honestly unexpected. Oishi, quietly clicking his tongue in admonishment, slipped both guns into his pants pockets. Those guys know their stuff. What do you mean? An officer won't fire at somebody who's fleeing. I want to keep my pension here. Oishi and I grinned at each other. Are you Toshiki Inukai-kun? The grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inukai? Yes. This is going to be a major incident. We probably only cut the tail off the lizard, though. Oishi smiled amusedly. The fact that the Onigafuchi Guardians, or rather the Sonozaki family behind them, was pulling the strings was apparent, but proving it wouldn't be easy. And with apologies to Oishi, this incident was unlikely to go public. If this caused an uproar, it would obviously lead to the minister losing his office. Why? With HQ having decided that doing so was in the national interest, this would probably be cleaned up quietly. It might be a rough way of saying it, but this was born in the shadows and was going to die in the shadows. Oh yeah, I forgot. Japan has like this weird culture where like if you're involved in an incident in any way, even if you're innocent, then it's like, oh well, that's embarrassing, better resign. Could make a comment, but it might be a rough way of saying. Oh yeah, I already said that. Oishi probably already understood the implications behind this incident. For the time being, let's cordon off the area, since it seems that one of them still has a gun. After that, let's get Inukai-kun to safety and get you to the hospital. As the tension in the situation faded, the pain from the gunshot wound in my shoulder blossomed once again. My forehead was also stinging painfully, and had grown hot enough to start a fire. Thinking that the tension had caused me to sweat, I wiped my forehead, but what came off was a large amount of blood. I realized that my shirt had been stained bright crimson from the blood flowing from my head. I turned around. The boy was safe and sound, without a doubt. There would probably be an investigation on the men who ran, but that was for another day. At this point in time, I could safely say we had cleared the major hurdle of securing the boy's safety. As soon as I recognized that, it felt like the lights in my head had been hit by a power failure. My knees buckled from underneath me, the ground there feeling as soft as a cloud. It didn't feel unpleasant, even as I was covered in the rain-soaked mud. Oishi came closer, asking if I was okay, but somehow I couldn't tell. I turned off the switch to the last light in my head. The exhaustion enveloped me. Sleep. Something softer than any blanket wrapped around me. New tips unlocked. A very kind person. Achievement unlocked. Mission accomplished. Patients admitted to the hospital can only accept calls at fixed times. That's why she wouldn't be receiving a call from him today. Yesterday, she had teased him that he got lonely easily, so he might have struggled with the idea of calling her sooner. That was much easier to imagine, rather than that he might just be too busy to call. Because he's just that type of person. Yukie, whispering that, smiled to herself. The announcement that visiting hours were over played over the hospital intercom, along with some music. She exchanged pleasantries with the family of the patient that was staying in the same room as her, probably eager for his mother to be discharged. Their small child was wearing a beaming smile. That child's mother was pregnant in the bed next to mine, with what may be their new brother or sister. They were probably ready to burst with the expectations, dreams, and worries of having a new sibling, the joys of a growing family. Bathing in those warm feelings, I stroked my own belly, which had grown quite large. I talked with him about how many children we wanted to have. We talked about how if we had 3, it would certainly be lively. However, there was the inescapable worry of whether I would be able to handle giving birth that many times. There is no mother out there who would hate to give birth because of that worry, though. Yukie, smiling as she said that to herself, gently stroked her stomach. The Metropolitan Public Safety Division, the place where that man's sense of justice had led him. That person was actually a very gentle, very fragile person. Didn't talk much about the specifics, but I didn't think he was suited for the assignment he was on right now. But as long as he said he was going to try his best, I would watch over him warmly. Your father, you see, is a very hard worker, you know? Yukie seemed to be enjoying herself as she talked to her own belly. At that moment, Yukie suddenly became concerned about something and looked out the window. It used to be this time. Long ago. She remembered that when she was little, around this time in the countryside where her grandmother lived, the Higurashi would fill the air with their chorus. This was the middle of Tokyo. Unlike in the countryside, you couldn't hear the song of the Higurashi. But for some reason, at that moment, Yukie felt that she wanted to hear that song. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's the end of it, so... Or rather, that's the end of today's stream. Because I think there's 2 more chapters of this arc, so I'll want to leave that for another stream, but let me just check. Yeah, okay. So yeah, that'll be all for today. Thanks for coming along. Next time we will see what the aftermath will be of this little incident. So yeah, see you guys then. Thanks for coming along.